Chapter 422. The howling wind swept over. Facing the dragon wing attack launched by the little loli in front of him, Soren's expression was not as panicked as before. He rolled back into the shadows and disappeared without a trace. No profession could withstand the attack of a dragon's wing. Even a wizard with a legendary force field or a barbarian with a legendary berserk would find it difficult to withstand the attack of a dragon's wing. However, it did not mean that he could not dodge it. Soren's shadow jump and shadow jump were not difficult to dodge the attack of the dragon's wing. Shadow jump. The terrible dragon wing attack swept across the entire altar. The little loli's chest was slightly undulating, and her breathing was slightly rapid. This kind of attack was also a great burden for a dragon. Huh! The little loli's figure rose into the air, tilted her head and looked down, and whispered, "Hiding again? What good things do you have on you? I can't even force you to show up." Anti-detection cloak. Although there was no way to let Soren avoid the effect caused by the AoE attack, it made him invisible to the naked eye. The terrain was a bit unfavorable for him. If it were not for the fact that the desert area was too easy to reveal, Soren would have a greater advantage in the battle. Hee. The little loli carefully looked around, and there seemed to be an energy shield on her body. She thought for a moment, then took a deep breath again, and her little cheeks puffed up. Dragon breath. Didn't the giant dragon's breath need time to recover? How can she use dragon breath twice in a row? Dragon breath, sleeping gas. A strange breath came out of the little loli's mouth, and then covered a large area in an instant. 2 types of dragon breath. Adult dragons with excellent talents could master 2 different types of dragon breath. One was elemental dragon breath, and the other was gas dragon breath. For example, the silver dragon could spit out ice dragon breath and paralyzing gas dragon breath. The range of the gas was quite large. Soren was almost instantly affected, and at the same time, a row of data appeared in front of him. You have been attacked by dragon breath. You have been attacked by dragon breath, sleeping gas. Test of compulsory immunity triggered. Test of fortitude passed. Test of willpower passed. You're completely immune to the dragon breath. It was ineffective. Soren's hard work in training his Nigong to increase his immunity finally paid off one day. He was now immune to the effects of the dragon's breath of deep sleep. Oh! The little loli gasped in mid-air and muttered, "Is it still useless?" To my surprise, this guy is actually quite strong. Shadow leap. A distorted figure appeared on her left side. Soren's figure suddenly soared into the air, and the minute meteor flame in his palm attacked her like a violent storm. He had been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. In the face of this little loli whose strange methods completely overturned his previous attempts, he could only passively wait for her to exhaust a portion of her strength before counterattacking. Rumble. A violent explosion was heard. The powerful penetrating ability of Melf's minute meteor flame successfully broke through the energy shield. However, in the case of the dragon wing form, the little loli immediately wrapped her petite body with her huge dragon wings as soon as she saw that the situation was not right. In this way, almost all the attacks fell on the huge brass-colored dragon wings. In fact, her body suffered almost no damage. Evade sight. Shadow leap. Soren's figure instantly landed, and then immediately appeared under the shadow of the little loli's huge dragon wings. His whole body was like a taut bow. He suddenly jumped into the air and directly stabbed the enemy in front of him from below. The huge dragon wings spread open slightly. The petite body appeared, and some of the broken lace princess dress fluttered in the wind. Soren soared from below, and his curved sword drew a cold light. After the tip of the sword touched the tip of the opponent's foot, Soren suddenly turned around and put away his sword. The tip of his foot tapped on the huge dragon wings, and then slowly landed like a goose. Ah! When the tip of the sword touched the bottom of her foot, the little loli's whole body trembled violently, but the pain that followed did not appear. Soren's control of his strength was quite subtle. He only touched her lightly, and her skin was not even scratched. The opponent did not want to hurt her. Yes. Soren did not intend to hurt her, and he did not have absolute confidence in defeating her. Since she could have dragon wings in the state of transformation, and retained the dragon's strong recovery ability, then it was very likely that she also had the terrifying defensive ability of a dragon. If this was the case, Soren's attack would at most slightly hurt her. On the contrary, if she was angered and transformed into a dragon, Soren's chances of winning would be greatly reduced. This little girl's strength was probably not low. She might be a brass dragon with a monster level of 25 or above. A gust of wind blew. The little loli's figure flew down from mid-air, and then directly came to Soren's side. Her little face was red, and her little hand covered the corner of her dress. Her expression was a little shy and angry. What did you just see? What did I see? Soren heard this and frowned. I was fighting with you just now, what else could I see? His mind was slightly distracted. Soren subconsciously recalled the scene just now, and instantly realized that he really did see something. Damn it. It can't be. Seeing Soren's expression, the little loli's face suddenly flushed red, and then she stared at him with dissatisfaction. Her little face also had an angry expression. Soren's expression was a little helpless. He quietly took half a step back and muttered, "What a surprise. Besides, isn't it the same if you fly around naked in the sky all day long in your dragon form?" Humph. The little loli glared at him, as if she was so angry that she wanted to bite him. She really did grind her teeth, but in the end she held it in. Her little face was red as she said, You're the one who flies around naked." The biological structure of a dragon. Although Soren had slain a dragon a few times, he really didn't study it in detail. However, in a battle situation, he really didn't find any obvious weaknesses on the dragon's body. It was as if most of the dragon's body was covered by dragon scales. Thinking about it this way, it didn't really count as flying around naked. But Soren thought about it and looked at the little loli in front of him. His expression suddenly became a little strange, and he secretly said to himself, "You were definitely flying around naked just now." Of course, he didn't dare to say it out loud. Otherwise, he might really have to fight with her. The little loli stood in place and stared at him, and then the huge dragon wings gradually disappeared. She raised her white little hand and tidied up her tattered clothes, then she stared at him with dissatisfaction and said in a crisp voice, "Let's go. Come back with me." Soren's expression suddenly became hesitant. The other party's words made him a little uncertain. Humph. The little loli turned around and looked at him. A fiery red elemental stone appeared in her palm. She gently weighed it in her palm and said proudly, "Don't you want this thing? I was just playing with you just now. If I really transformed into my dragon form, you might not be able to beat me. If you want it, then come back with me first. This thing doesn't seem to be very useful to me, but it's still my collection. If you want it, then you have to give me something in return." Speaking of this, the little loli couldn't help but squint her beautiful big eyes. She looked up and down at Soren, as if she was looking for treasures on him. A leopard can't change its spots. Soren was very clear about the character of a dragon. But the other party didn't seem to have much hostility. Soren hesitated for a moment, then gently nodded and said, "Okay." This little girl wasn't simple. Soren suspected that she came from the Dragon Island, but the Dragon Island in the material plane didn't have a kingdom. Country of the Brass Dragons. Such a name didn't seem to exist in the material plane. In the entire multiverse, there was only one place that could be called the Country of the Dragons. The plane that place was located in wasn't simple. Legend had it that the Time Dragon, who was just a baby dragon, had a challenge difficulty of 24/7. It lived in that plane. Chapter 423. Power. The unprecedented power gradually merged into his body. Soren stood motionless, and his figure seemed to become hazy. The shadows around him seemed to cover him, and the picture of the whole space seemed to be a little distorted. The power of the shadows permeated the space, and the distorted shadows rushed to Soren's body like a tide, making his whole person seem to be isolated in another space. He seemed to be just a shadow, and his real body was no longer in the material plane, but in another world. So everything gradually disappeared, and Soren's figure returned to its original appearance. A large number of data appeared. The shadow dancer profession has leveled up to level 7. Received 32, DX 26 plus, INT 22 to 10, *0. 5. Skill points, HP increased by 14, profession HP 8 plus, constitution 22 to 10, *0. 5. You've received 1 free attribute point. The shadow dancer profession has leveled up to level 8. Received 32, DX 26 plus, INT 22 to 10, *0. 5. Skill points, HP increased by 14, profession HP 8 plus, constitution 22 to 10, *0. 5. You've received 1 talent point. Advanced to legendary. You've received 1 extra talent point. The total profession level of the rogue has been raised to 15. You've automatically mastered the ability, Shadow Control. The profession level of the Shadow Dancer has been raised to level 7. You've automatically mastered the ability, Flexible Mind. Breakthrough the critical point. The ability, Danger Sense, has been raised to the ability, Danger Sense. Breakthrough the critical point. The ability, Reflex Evasion, has been raised to the ability, Reflex Evasion. He finally entered the realm of legendary. Soren slowly opened his eyes and looked at the huge spider corpse in front of him, then turned around and looked behind him. The little loli tilted her head and sat on a rock looking at him. Her expression seemed to be a little surprised, but only a little surprised. When she saw Soren turn around and look at her, she couldn't help but smile and said in a crisp voice, "Congratulations. It seems that you've advanced to legendary. But it's a bit troublesome for you humans to advance to legendary. Unlike us dragons, we just need to fill our stomachs and have a good night's sleep." Dragons. The difference between the two species was too great. The only species that could sleep all the way to the legendary realm was the dragons. Soren's slaughter EXP had already reached a critical point. After killing the venomous spider in front of him, he finally had enough slaughter EXP to advance to legendary. So, he did not hesitate to choose to advance directly. A row of data appeared again, Advance to Legend. You have obtained partial information about the legendary ability, Shadow Domain. You have obtained partial information about the legendary ability, Shadow Step. Advancing into the legendary realm did not mean that one could directly master legendary level abilities. Many legendary level abilities required a lot of time to train. However, Soren had an obvious advantage after entering the legendary realm. He could directly use the ability points he obtained to upgrade his legendary level abilities. This was also the reason why he had been holding back until now. From now on, every talent point would become extremely precious because the talent points obtained after entering the legendary realm could directly strengthen the legendary ability. Note: ability points obtained by the wizard profession cannot be used to upgrade the rogue profession. This was the second time he received information about Shadow Realm. Soren now only needed to get the last information about Shadow Realm, and he could directly master this legendary level ability. The quantitative change finally led to a qualitative change. At the moment when Soren broke into the legendary realm, the rogue's combat ability had been comprehensively improved. However, because he was a wizard, some of the rogue's legendary level abilities could not be mastered. Note: this is also the reason why there were only 2 information about Shadow Realm. The improvement after advancing into the legendary realm was amazing. In addition to the new abilities, Soren's original abilities were also strengthened. Shadow Jump, 100 meters, Shadow Jump, 200 meters. Shadow Jump, 1 time, Shadow Jump, 2 times. Intuition Evasion, proficient in Intuition Evasion. Reflex Evasion, proficient in Reflex Evasion. Soren had been accumulating evasion abilities for a long time. The accumulation of battle after battle finally exploded at the moment he advanced into the legendary realm. The 2 evasion abilities he mastered were upgraded at the same time. Proficient in Intuition Evasion, supernatural ability. From now on, you have an amazing intuition and prediction ability for any possible attack. It will be difficult for other rogues to sneak attack you, unless the local rogue's profession level is more than 4 levels higher than yours. Otherwise, you will easily see through their intentions and ignore the enemy's sneak attack. Note, this ability is effective for sneak attacks of any profession. Proficient in intuition evasion. As long as he had this ability, Soren could basically ignore other people's sneak attacks from now on. Only legendary rogues with a profession level of 25 or above could sneak attack Soren. As for other professions, it was basically impossible to sneak attack Soren. Note, this ability is often used to replace Sixth Sense. Proficient in reflex evasion, supernatural ability. From now on, your reflex ability will become more refined. You can perform a difficult reflex evasion test for any attack aimed at you. As long as you pass the reflex test, the damage you receive will be greatly reduced, including AoE spell attacks. You can rely on your amazing reflex ability to avoid most of the damage. Note, after dodging AoE spells, you will receive at most half of the damage. Proficient in reflex evasion. The specialty of a rogue was also a life-saving ability to avoid being directly killed by a wizard's AoE spells. As long as he mastered this ability, he could perform a reflex evasion test for AoE spells. With Soren's current basic attributes, it was not difficult to avoid the core area of the attack. From now on, whether it was fireball or ice storm, even if Soren was directly hit by it, the damage he received would be greatly reduced. And these two evasion abilities were stacked, so the probability of physical attacks hitting Soren was also very low. Speaking of evasion. Here, it was necessary to count Soren's current abilities that increased evasion. They were flexible movement, roll evasion, proficient in reflex evasion, and proficient in intuition evasion. A total of 4 evasion abilities. Finally, it was the rogue's innate ability, flexible mind. Flexible mind, supernatural ability. From now on, if you are affected by the effects of charm, confusion, or illusion spells, you will have an additional chance to pass the test of immunity. Even if you fail the first test of immunity, you will not be affected by the effect of the spell because your flexible mind has produced a supernatural power that allows you to make a second test of immunity. If you fail the second test of immunity, you will not be immune to the effect of the spell. Ultimate enhancement. Soren, who originally had an innate advantage in charm and control spells, could now be said to be basically immune to such spells. Even a legendary wizard might not be able to charm and confuse him. From now on, Soren could basically ignore the effects of confusion and misdirection spells. It's almost done. Soren looked at his own data page and said to himself, my evasion ability has been stacked to the limit, and it can only be a legendary ability. It's enough to be immune to charm and confusion spells. Basically, I don't have to worry about being controlled by the enemy. 2 expertise points. Soren was a little hesitant about the 2 expertise points obtained from advancing into the legendary realm. Legendary ability. Most of the legendary abilities had prerequisites, including basic attributes, mastery of prerequisites, mastery of basic abilities, and so on. If he wanted to get the ability, legendary dual wielding, it was basically impossible to get the ability, dual wielding. As Soren had just advanced into the legendary realm, some of his abilities had not been completed yet, so the number of legendary abilities he could master was relatively limited. The most eye-catching legendary ability. It was actually not his own ability, but the legendary ability, Epic Sturdy, of the warrior class. Damn. Because of the importance of survival, Soren's constitution had always been not low. Now, he directly obtained the prerequisite to master the legendary ability, Epic Sturdy. At present, the legendary abilities he could choose from were Epic Sturdy, legendary ability. Your constitution has advanced beyond the realm of mortals. From now on, you can further strengthen your body, making yourself half as strong as a dragon. Your HP will be greatly increased, and most attacks will not be able to trigger the judgment of death. This ability can be strengthened up to 10 times, and each increase will increase your HP by 30 points. Note, Prerequisites are 20 constitution and the sturdy ability. Maximum HP increase is 300 points. A top-notch tank ability. Increasing his HP to the limit was even more abnormal than the Saint's. Unfortunately, Soren's requirements for this legendary ability were very low. Legendary evasion, legendary ability. Your evasion ability has been transformed into an instinct. Even if you don't discover the enemy's presence, your body's instinct is enough to dodge the enemy's attack. From now on, any physical attack from the enemy, you will be able to dodge at least one attack. This ability can be triggered at most once per minute. This ability is a passive ability. Note, prerequisites are 25 agility, agile movement, reflex evasion, instinct evasion, roll evasion. Legendary evasion. From now on, it would not be so easy for any physical attack to hit Soren. The evasion ability of a legendary rogue was above most professions. About this legendary ability, someone had tested it before. A legendary monk, a legendary barbarian, and a legendary ranger. The three of them attacked at the same time. The damage they caused should have hit the target every minute, but it was strangely dodged by the opponent instinctively. That was to say, if a profession could only effectively hit the target once per minute, then no matter how long they fought, they would not be able to cause any damage to the target. Legendary evasion stacked with any evasion type ability. Then, this was the last legendary ability to be activated. Legendary combat skills, legendary ability. From now on, your combat skills have reached the peak, and fighting has become an instinct for you. Any attack you identify will gain an additional legendary bonus of 1 point. Your combat instinct allows you to more easily exert your peak strength. This ability is a prerequisite for other legendary abilities. Note, no prerequisites. The only legendary ability with no prerequisites. But it was a prerequisite for insight into weakness. To master the legendary ability, insight into weakness, one must first master the ability of legendary combat skills. There were many kinds of legendary abilities. Soren only triggered a few of them because of his focus. There was no doubt that he chose legendary evasion. Soren was also determined to get insight into weakness, so his choice was basically confirmed. Legendary evasion and legendary combat skills. Note, the legendary data will be sorted out and posted in the public chapter after a while. There is one more update today. Chapter 424. Spider Forest. Soren walked in front to explore the way, and behind him was a lively little Lolita. In fact, Soren still didn't understand why this little Loli would suddenly decide to go on an adventure with him after listening to his ridiculous stories about how he poisoned teenagers and pretended to be pretentious dragons for a whole night. Fog. Dragons should be very lazy creatures, right? In Soren's memory, dragons spent most of their time sleeping. He had also seen some good dragons. Although they would deal with other intelligent creatures, he had never heard of them going on an adventure together. The little Lolita in front of him didn't know what was wrong with her. She actually said that she wanted to go on an adventure with him to see interesting things. And she also said that if Soren didn't agree, she would not give him the elemental stone, fire, and she planned to eat it in one bite. Note, she really took a bite at that time. It was said before. Brass dragons could eat almost anything, and most of them could be digested. There was no doubt. If the little Lolita in front of him really ate the elemental stone, she might really be able to digest it completely. Finally, Soren could only helplessly take her with him, and he believed that the sentence since ancient times, chaos has always produced funny people, was correct. Shoo! Soren, who was exploring the way in front, suddenly stopped. He turned around and made a gesture to the little Lolita who was humming and jumping behind him, and said in a deep voice, "There's someone in front. Don't make a sound." After advancing to legendary, Soren's abilities in all aspects had been improved a lot. Since there was a Lolita dragon who wanted to go on an adventure with him, he planned to get the last elemental stone as well. In this way, he didn't have to trouble Gloria. Now that Soren was not in the outer islands, he could only feel at ease if Gloria was in Mordor City. The Lolita dragon behind him was definitely at the legendary level. With her, it would not be difficult to get the last elemental stone, wind. Maybe he could use her power to defeat the last 4 elemental elders. Hearing this, the little Loli immediately quieted down and tiptoed closer to Soren. She even climbed onto his back and whispered into his ear, "Who is it? Is there anyone nearby? Why didn't I notice it?" His ears were itchy. Soren turned around and glared at her, but when he saw the little Loli's smiling face, he sighed and said softly, "It should be an elf." There was a scouting team nearby. They seemed to be quite skilled. The spider forest was close to the elf kingdom. Soren didn't come all the way from the desert just for sightseeing. In fact, anyone with a bit of intelligence would be able to guess where the spider forest led to based on its name. That was right. The Underdark. Many of the spiders here were the offspring of the Queen of Spiders, Loltha's pets. For a long time, the battle between the surface elves and the underground drows had never stopped. The spider forest was the front line of the battle and also a passage connecting to the Underdark. The last elemental crystal stone was in the Underdark. It was also the elemental crystal stone that he knew the best because Soren had been active in the Underdark for a long time. "Are we going to the underground?" The little Loli lay on Soren's back. Her beautiful big eyes were eager to move. She said excitedly, "I haven't been to the underground yet. Is there anything fun down there?" The Underdark. That was not something fun. Soren grabbed the little Loli from his back and said in a deep voice, "Be quiet. Let's find a way to sneak in. Don't get involved in the battle between the surface elves and the drows." The spider forest was very dense. 2 silhouettes approached stealthily. Although the little Loli was a giant dragon, her stealth ability was unexpectedly not low when she transformed into a human. Soren was quite familiar with this place because the spider forest was a leveling ground for adventurers with a profession level of 5 to 10. There were many poisonous spiders here, all of which were the offspring of the Queen of Spiders, Loltha's pets. The speed of their reproduction was a headache for many nearby races. Poisonous spiders, phase spiders, fire spiders, etc. There was a small path here that could lead to the Underdark. Soren planned to take the little Loli dragon into the underground world from there and see if a certain rumor had happened. Blood. The ground was full of blood. Accompanied by the sound of blood dripping, a burly barbarian with wounds all over his body knelt on the ground. His breath was very weak. Hideous wounds were all over his body. Many of them looked like marks left by sharp claws. Even with the strong physique of a barbarian, he was gradually approaching the edge of death. Hee. A strange and gloomy laughter sounded. The demigod vampire, who was wearing a dark red noble suit, slowly appeared. He looked at the body of a beautiful woman at his feet, lifted his foot, and stepped on the beautiful head. He said playfully, "Just with your group of trash. You want to join forces to defeat me? You're overestimating yourselves. Today, I'll let you know the difference between a mortal and a god. I'm God. I'm God." A terrible force spread. The blood on the ground all moved like living creatures. The barbarian kneeling on the ground trembled. Facing the approaching demigod vampire, he suddenly said, Don't kill me. I never thought of competing with you for the power of the Dread Lord. Don't kill me. I can tell you where the first deity is." "The first deity?" The vampire Reinhardt stopped and asked with a slight frown, "Where?" He had been looking for that person for a long time. Unfortunately, there had been no clues. It was as if the other party had completely disappeared. Soren. The barbarian's face was full of fear, and his voice trembled. "The beheader, Soren. He is the first deity. You should have heard of him. The pirate king of the South Coast. If it wasn't for the power of the Dread Lord, he wouldn't have been able to unify the South Coast so quickly." Pirate king? The beheader, Soren? The demigod vampire's face showed a contemptuous smile, and slowly said, "So it's him. He's actually fighting for that pathetic power among the mortals. It seems that I've overestimated him. Speaking of this, his scarlet pupils looked at the barbarian in front of him. No. Don't kill me. Ah. The barbarian's body slowly fell. The demigod vampire looked around with a cold expression and ordered, "Deal with this place. Don't leave any traces." Recently, the group of paladins has been really annoying. Damn paladins. They were like cockroaches that couldn't be killed. After killing a group, another group would appear immediately. Were they really not afraid of death? Some other vampire servants appeared and quickly began to clean up the blood nearby. The demigod vampire looked up in the direction of the sea and murmured, "The south coast? Recently, the Church of Riches has been very hostile to me. But I still have to kill him as soon as possible. Soren. He shouldn't be a troublesome opponent, right?" Patter. There was a slight sound of something falling to the ground. The hazy figure of the Helpemir appeared behind the demigod vampire. He frowned and glanced at the blood on the ground. He slowly said, "Reinhardt. Let's talk about that later. Important news has been sent." The demigod vampire turned around when he heard the words. He smiled and looked at the Helpemir. He opened his hand as if to hug the other party, but the Helpemir avoided him. "What news has been sent?" The Helpemir pulled away a little. As a depraved and evil dark creature, vampires had certain habits. Ever since he learned something about them, he had been reluctant to get too close to Reinhardt. The Helpemir raised his hand and threw a file over, then said, "The god of rogues and half-elves has appeared. He's in the Underdark. Someone saw his miracles in the Underdark. This is an important opportunity for us." God. There was a hint of excitement on the demigod vampire's face. There was a sickly blush on his handsome face. He murmured, "A saint? I can finally taste the blood of a god." Chapter 425. Darkness. This was the strongest feeling anyone had when they entered the Underdark from the surface world. The entire narrow passage was pitch black, and the ground was slightly slippery due to the water stains. Dark green moss grew on the walls on both sides. Soren's night vision allowed him to easily see the surroundings, but the little lowly behind him was a little troublesome. Dragons had better vision than humans, but it was very limited when it came to dark environments. At most, they could reach the level of night vision, and it was very inconvenient for them to move in complete darkness. The Underdark was not completely dark. In fact, most of the areas in the Underdark were in the state of night vision. This was because there would be more or less light diffusing. It could be from fluorescent plants, or from other sources of light. The specific difference could be understood as a night with no moon or stars. In this case, the range of human vision would be reduced to less than 3 meters. Many places in the Underdark were like this, so adventurers from the surface had to prepare torches or find some rare items that could enhance their night vision. This was not difficult for wizards. A normal night vision helmet cost around 300 to 500 Kindler coins. Those who had the ability to venture into the Underdark would not be short of money. Oh. It's so dark. The little lowly was lying on Soren's back. She moved her head close to his ear and whispered, "Are we not underground yet? Can't I cast Illuminate permanently? Light? Are you planning to be a target in the Underdark?" "No." Soren refused without hesitation and said in a deep voice, "About 1,000 meters down, there will be fluorescent moss. You will be able to see things then." Light. In the Underdark, a light source was a living target. Soren knew too well how much trouble it would cause if he lit a light source. Hooked horrors, giant lizards, mind flayers, and so on. These creatures in the Underdark were very sensitive to light. Recklessly using light was the same as starting the farming mode, that adventurers jokingly called. As they went deeper into the underworld, some stalactites began to appear above Soren's head. He did not know where the underground water source was, but he could hear the dripping sound of it. In the Underdark, any place near a water source was a battle zone. There were bound to be monsters that lived underground nearby. Oh. There seems to be a swamp nearby. The little loli leaned on Soren's shoulder and seemed to dislike the smell. She wrinkled her nose and said, "I could feel the wet smell from afar, and there was also a rotten smell. No wonder those ugly and dirty black dragons like to stay underground. In the underground swamp." Basically, places with swamps in the Underdark would have very obvious light sources. As expected, Soren began to see light. It was dark green moss that emitted a faint fluorescent light. It was a mutated plant that was very common in the Underdark. The other was a mushroom that was a specialty of the Underdark. These two plants were quite tenacious and could even grow near volcanoes. Soren had seen fiery red moss near a volcano in the Underdark. The ground became a little wet. Soren gently put the little loli down and then made a gesture to keep quiet. In the underground swamp, it was very easy for a kind of creature to exist in such a terrain. Swamp bearmen. Simply put, they were a kind of mutated human that was infected with a virus. They belonged to a branch of the beast men. For some unknown reason, they were bitten by other beast men, or they were born with the disease of beast men. In the end, they had the ability to transform into a beast or a beast man in combat. Lulumau, who Soren brought back, was a catwoman in the beast men branch. Looking at Lulumau's talent, one could understand the combat power of the beast men. Most adult beast men were born between level 5 and level 8. About the beast men. Soren should be most familiar with werewolves, tigermen, and bearmen. Among them, werewolves infected with the beastmen virus were the most common and could occasionally be encountered in the surface world. The rarer ones were tigermen and bearmen. Most of them lived in very rare areas. As for catwomen like Lulumau, they were basically on the verge of extinction. Needless to say, werewolves and tigermen had a natural strength adjustment of plus 16, which meant that as long as they transformed, their strength would directly increase by 16 points. Note, the strength of bearmen in the Underdark fluctuates between 27 to 36. In human form, their strength is not much different from ordinary people. Most of them are between 9 to 14. Even if it was just an adult bearman, their strength after transformation was higher than a strong brown bear. Huge footprints began to appear on the ground. They were about the same size as a brown bear. These mutated bearmen were between humans and beasts. The beastmen virus affected their intelligence, making them not much different from savages. Most of them lived in a tribal way. There were rumors that bearmen were the failed product of a droll transformation research experiment in a glorious arcane era, which eventually led to the appearance of the beastmen virus. Unfortunately, no one could prove it. Note, the appearance of the beastmen virus was earlier than the Arcane Empire, and the Arcane Empire also conducted research in this area. Thinking back to when he first met Lulumau, he could understand what kind of creatures these bearmen were. At that time, she was really wild and untamed. "I'll go and see the situation." Soren glanced at the little loli behind him and whispered, "Maybe I can find a guide in the bearmen's territory. They like to capture other creatures as slaves and reserve food." Stealth. Soren's figure disappeared into the shadows. In the Underdark, he was like a fish in water. He could enter stealth at any time. There were a lot of footprints on the ground. Soren preliminarily judged that there were 3 to 6 bearmen living here. With this scale, even the patrolling drow guards would not easily provoke them. The swamp terrain was a bit troublesome. But fortunately, Soren still had spells. As he gradually sneaked in, he soon saw a shabby shack. And a huge cage. There were obvious skeletons on the ground, which could be distinguished from drow, grey dwarf, and gnome creatures. There was no bonfire, which meant that the bearmen in front of him were the most primitive creatures that ate raw meat and drank blood. There was no way to communicate with them at all. The beastmen virus could completely destroy the brain and turn them into beasts. Some of them could not even master the ability to transform back into a human for the rest of their lives. In the entire Underdark, there were very few beastmen that could be civilized and intelligent. In this regard, Lulumau was a very smart beastman. Strong combat power and very low IQ. This seemed to be more prepared for war. There were some creatures in the cage. Soren saw an injured mutant bugbear, a dying grey dwarf, and a dead hook horror. All of them were very difficult to deal with. But for the bear men infected with the beastmen virus, they were all just food. Bang! Heavy footsteps could be heard. In Soren's field of vision, a huge monster that weighed more than 1,500 pounds appeared. It looked like a brown bear that walked upright. Its head was that of a bear, but part of its body had the outline of a human. It was very similar to a werewolf after transformation. No matter how one looked at it, their bloodline level was much lower than Lulu Mao's. It also meant that they were more primitive, more wild, and more threatening. A bearman that can't transform back into a human. Soren could determine the state of the enemy at a glance. After the bearmen returned to their territory, their noses twitched and sniffed everywhere, as if they had smelled something. Wild intuition. In front of him was the lowest level of beast men, the most brutal, vicious, and inhumane. They couldn't be considered intelligent creatures at all. They could only be considered as beasts that walked upright. Bearman, Beastman, Grade 3. Challenge Rating 10, Monster Level 12+, has the ability to transform. Highest and lowest attribute points, 36 and 9, total attribute points, 85 to 100. Special abilities, Sturdy, Violent Strike, Powerful Slam, Rend, Claw, Roar, Transformation, Rage, Bloodthirst, Charge, Wild Intuition. Difficulty, S+. Most of the bearmen were Grade 3 creatures, but if you measured them as an ordinary Grade 3 enemy, it was basically an act of suicide. This was because their difficulty in Grade 3 was S+. Note, a team of fully armed adventurers with a profession level of 10 has less than a 10% chance of defeating a bearman after exhausting all their items. P.S. There is only one chapter today. Please let Futu organize his thoughts. Moi. Chapter 426. I'm preparing for a peak battle, a breakthrough attempt. The foreshadowing that should be buried is almost done. I hope to finish it before the end of the month. Please look forward to the true strength of the Arcane Empire. Poochie. Fresh blood spurted out. The bear shifter let out an angry and painful roar, and slapped his back. The huge force set off a gust of wind, and a millstone-sized bluestone was smashed into pieces in an instant. Soren's figure leaped, and his curved sword icing death slashed through the gap between the bear shifter's arms again. Accompanied by a cold light, another wound appeared on the bear shifter's body. Tremendous strength, sluggish movements, and a brain that wasn't considered smart. For Soren, who had now advanced into the legendary realm, dealing with this kind of enemy was actually very simple, because it was too difficult for the bear shifter to hit him. If it wasn't for the fact that most of the bear shifter's physique was higher, he was afraid that his initial backstab would have been able to finish off the target. But now, the bear shifter's injuries weren't light either. Its chest kept bleeding. Its huge body seemed incomparably ferocious, but every time it attacked, it hit the empty ground. If it was a tiger shifter with a high threat, it might still be able to touch Soren's body, but the bear shifter didn't have much to think about. Plop. A dull sound of something falling to the ground sounded. Soren slowly withdrew his curved sword, and stared at the dead body of the bear shifter on the ground. After losing its vitality, its body gradually shrank, and finally became a human man with thick hair all over his body. His face was very rough, and his appearance was similar to that of a savage. It was only after his death that he turned into a human form. The side effects of the bear shifter disease were very big. If one's innate strength was not enough, it was very likely that they would be like the bear shifter in front of him. They would be an ignorant beast for the rest of their lives, and only death could make them return to their original form. In addition, there was another very dangerous aspect of the bear shifter. Low-level bear shifter like the one in front of him would carry some kind of terrible virus. If one was injured by them, there was about a 10% chance of being infected with the bear shifter disease. At this time, one would have to go through a compulsory test of immunity. Or else, it was possible for them to be infected with the beast virus. After a period of feverish and painful transformation, it was possible for them to transform into beast men on a certain night of a full moon or at any other time. During the transformation process, there was also a mandatory constitution test. If it failed, it would cause the user to go crazy or even die. Most of the beast viruses were carried by low-level war creatures. Their bodies contained the most primitive virus. If they were the offspring of a beast man, such as Lulu, an extremely rare existence, then the beast man virus would transform into their own genetic lineage. Lulu's main body was still in human form. There was no sign of her transformation, so it was very likely that her father or mother was a purebred human. Note 1, on the mutated form of beast men and the mutation after reproduction, Chapter 6. Note 2, on reproductive isolation and the probability of interracial reproduction of war creatures, Chapter 3, research report on mixed werewolves. Soren wasn't afraid of these viruses. Regardless of whether it was the beast virus or the undead corpse poison, it was impossible for him to be immune to them with his current endurance, vitality, and will. Unless Soren was infected by the virus while he was dead, he could basically ignore them. Come out. Soren slashed open the cage next to him and said to the grey dwarf imprisoned inside, "Where are you from? Are you familiar with the surrounding terrain?" Bang. Just as Soren opened the cage, the bugbear suddenly rushed out and ran out of the swamp without saying a word. It didn't know if it was out of its mind, but it actually thought that it could escape from Soren's hands. What greeted it was a cold flash of a sword. Soren swung his sword and chopped off the bugbear's head. The blood that gushed out splashed onto the grey dwarf's body. The grey dwarf couldn't help but shudder and then stutter, "Your Highness. Your Highness. Don't kill me. I'll tell you everything I know. Please don't kill me. No matter where you want to go, I'll lead the way for you." Light footsteps could be heard. The little loli tiptoed from outside. When she saw the corpse on the ground, she immediately clapped her hands and swaggered over. She pouted and said, "Soren. I'm bored to death. The environment here is so disgusting. Why don't we go out first?" As a brass dragon that lived in the desert, she naturally hated the swamp environment. "Okay." Soren nodded slightly and put away his sword. He stared coldly at the grey dwarf in front of him and said in a deep voice, "Lead the way. There should be a road that leads to Gleck City nearby. Take us there first." The grey dwarf cowered and walked forward. Soren followed behind with an expressionless face. The little loli was still carefree and happy, but she didn't like the environment here. About 1,000 meters away from Soren, a slender masked woman stood in the darkness. Her eyes were slightly shining, as if they contained some kind of mysterious power. There seemed to be an invisible force field around her body. Anything that got close to her, including the wind, was isolated. She stared at Soren's position. Her gaze seemed to penetrate through space and directly locked onto Soren's figure. Die. Heavy footsteps sounded. Behind the slender woman, a burly man appeared. He carried a heavy battle axe with one hand. His terrible muscles seemed to contain infinite power. The luster of the adamantine was mixed with some kind of indescribable power. Just a glance could tell that it contained a strong lethality. This was a very terrible barbarian. There was almost no need to guess that his strength was already above the legendary realm. He spoke the ancient common language, a language that was used thousands of years ago. It was a language composed of 36 rune letters. The name was very special. However, if it was converted into the current syllables, it should be possible to call this masked woman Die. The barbarian slowly walked behind her and said in a deep voice, "What are you doing?" "Haha." There was a chuckle. The masked woman turned around and looked at the barbarian. She smiled and said lightly, "I accidentally found a good rogue. He's a very interesting little guy. And he's followed by a brass dragon in human form. Such a combination is quite rare." The barbarian frowned and said in a deep voice, "Don't complicate things. We didn't come out of Sigil City to play this time. This is the first official action of the Godslayer. Our bait has attracted the target. The Queen of Spiders has turned her attention to the bait. To deal with this terrible existence, I believe you should know the consequences of failure. The Queen of Spiders. The supreme existence of the Underdark. The Queen of the Drows. The ruler of the Abyss. A terrible god with great divine power. Dai's expression gradually became serious. She withdrew her gaze and said slowly, I know what's important. I won't delay business. It's just that this little guy's soul is very special. I've never seen such soul power. Dark, cruel, ruthless. But there's an indescribable light. I even saw the glory of sacrifice. It's a little fascinating. The masked woman smiled a little frivolously, then slowly spread out her palm and said in a cold voice, War Chess, Note 2, Simulation activated. Activate, Arcane War Chess, Scanning Mode. A cluster of pure energy appeared. Then, an invisible energy field spread out in all directions. Psionic energy field activated. Soul scanning activated. Activate terrain simulation. Scan the surrounding 100 kilometers. Phalanx 7 took over command of the war chess system. Beginning terrain simulation. Tactical map construction. Scanning the nearby space nodes. Psionic energy field spread. Activate psionic resonance. Synchronized psionic transmission established. Calculating space waymarks. Semiplane synchronization locked. Simulation of a different dimension teleportation channel. Teleportation node rune. Arcane power armor, Note 3, standby. Phalanx 6 took over command of space waymarks. Godslayer plan activated. Target, Queen of Spiders, Lolth. Note 1, Sigil City is a very mysterious existence in the entire multiverse. Legend has it that it is an important node of the multiverse and has portals that connect countless planes. The Lady of Pain is the absolute ruler of Sigil City and has terrible power that mortals can't imagine. However, Sigil City has been closed for a long time, and now there are very few existences that can enter Sigil City. Sigil City rejects all gods, and even gods with great divine power can't easily set foot in this place. Note 2, Arcane War Chess is a tactical simulation game that originated from the Arcane Empire. Now this special technology has been lost, and only a few wizard organizations have a partial simulation ability. When Soren was looking for the second elemental stone, the elemental djinn he met mentioned this, war chess. The monsters it summoned at that time simulated the rules of arcane war chess. Note 3, the magic-powered armor was a terrifying war machine during the Arcane Empire, in all the previous information. Chapter 427. Pa Soren, who was moving forward, suddenly stopped. His muscles tightened, and his palm held the hilt of icing death in an instant. He was ready to fight at any time. The Lolita dragon next to him was shocked by Soren's action, but in the next moment, she quickly disappeared. Her petite figure appeared in midair, and her whole body was shrouded in an invisible energy field. The only one who was unaware was the captured Duergar, who was still looking around blankly. Psionic energy field. Soren's expression was very solemn. His perception was raised to the limit, and his telepathy was also paying attention to the surroundings. He slowly said, "There's a psionic warlock casting nearby." The little Lolita dragon's expression was very serious, and she whispered, "Legendary." No, no, no. It should be above legendary. I felt a terrible power like a psionic storm. The coverage of the psionic force field is quite wide. How is that possible? There can't be such a powerful psionic warlock in the material plane. Both of them were ready to fight at any time. However, there was no abnormal situation nearby, and the sudden burst of psionic force field only existed for a moment. When it calmed down, Soren even suspected that he had just seen an illusion. However, if there was no Lolita dragon next to him, Soren might think that it was an illusion, but now that the Lolita dragon next to him also felt it, it was absolutely impossible that it was an illusion. There was indeed a very powerful psionic warlock casting a spell, and the coverage of the psionic force field was so large that it was a little beyond Soren's imagination. Such a coverage area. According to Soren's past memory, if it was really done by a psionic warlock, then his profession level might be above level 30. A level 30 psionic warlock? How was that possible? Soren had never encountered such an existence during the time of troubles. There were probably only a few creatures in the astral plane that could reach this level. Was it an illusion? The Lolita dragon shook her little head and landed on the ground. She stared at Soren and murmured, "Did you feel it?" "Just now." "A very powerful psionic force field." Soren nodded slowly and said in a deep voice, "I felt it." It's impossible for both of us to be hallucinating at the same time. There might really be a psionic warlock nearby. It's best to be careful later. The Lolita dragon nodded her little head gently and said softly, "Could it be a Githyanki?" The knowledge in my memory tells me that Githyankis often appear in the Underdark, and there are many powerful psionic warlocks among them. Surprise. Soren looked at the Lolita dragon next to him in surprise and said slowly, "It's possible. Githyankis do appear frequently in the Underdark." It seemed that this Lolita dragon was quite knowledgeable. Most of the time, a dragon's hereditary memory would take a long time. Judging from her current form, she probably hadn't fully awakened all her hereditary memories. This meant that her bloodline was most likely from the Dragon Nation. Githyanki. Damn it. I don't know much about the Underdark before the Avatar crisis. Is there really a powerful psionic warlock visiting the Underdark from the astral boundary? Which astral boundary traveler would it be? Soren tried his best to search his memory, but unfortunately, he could get very little information. When he first came to the Underdark, it was already after the Avatar crisis. The gap between the two was actually quite big, which was why he needed a guide. The difficulty of the Underdark was much higher than the surface world. Before the Avatar crisis, only a few adventurers could enter it. About this period of time, a lot of information was just hearsay because not many people could intervene in this level of field at that time. Soren also reincarnated in the river Styx before he became a legend, so there was a partial gap in the information level. Be careful. Soren looked around, motioned the Grey Dwarf to continue moving forward, and said slowly, "Psionic warlocks are not easy to deal with. We have to be ready for battle at any time." The group continued to move forward. But until Soren found the way to the city of the Grey Dwarves, they didn't encounter any abnormalities. Everything just now was like an illusion. They didn't encounter any enemies, nor did they see any traces of psionic warlocks. The psionic force field disappeared. It only existed for a moment and then disappeared completely. The Underdark, the crossing passage. The demigod vampire threw away the body of the drows in his hand, raised his hand and gently wiped the corners of his mouth, and said contemptuously, "This group of dirty and licentious drows. Their blood is as disgusting as feces." At the feet of the Helpemir was the body of another female drow. He glanced at the demigod vampire coldly and said slowly, "Then why did you bite her?" Reinhardt spat softly, as if he still felt a little disgusted. He turned and glanced at the Helpemir next to him. A frivolous smile appeared on his handsome face, and he said lightly, "We are not familiar with this place, so we need a servant to lead the way." A drop of blood slid down. With some kind of evil and depraved power, the body of the drows at his feet suddenly trembled. "Master." A cold and ruthless voice sounded, and the dead drow stood up. Her pupils were gray, and her whole body was like a puppet, humbly kneeling at the feet of the demigod vampire. "Look." The demigod vampire smiled slightly, raised his hand and tapped on the forehead of the drows, and slowly said, "What a simple thing. Now we can let her lead the way. The god of half-elves and rogues. I can't wait any longer. What should the blood of a god taste like? It must be very wonderful." The Helpemir looked at him blankly, gently touched the magic flute in his palm, and said coldly, "Don't be complacent. This is the territory of the Queen of Spiders. It is not ruled out that she will also notice this prey. This existence is not to be trifled with. Even her avatar is enough to kill us easily. Reinhardt's body trembled, and then he seemed calm and said, "It shouldn't be. For the Queen of Spiders, a weak god should not be enough for her to personally take action." The Helpheimer did not speak, but continued to walk forward. After a while, he said, "Don't forget her greed and brutality. Besides, she may be interested in anything related to elves." The demigod vampire paused for a moment, and then said, "But that's a half-elf, and it has nothing to do with the drows." The Helpheimer looked around and then said, "I know. So we'd better pray that we don't meet her. The recent changes in the drows may be because she has passed on some kind of oracle. In addition, I heard that a group of paladins with good strength have also come to the Underdark. I don't know what the purpose of these guys is. What could possibly attract them here in this dark zone that is filled with evil and chaos?" "Paladins?" The demigod vampire frowned and then said with a disgusted face, "What a group of guys. An unknown place." A towering adept's tower stood on the plains, piercing the clouds. At the top of the wizard tower, there was an astrology platform with countless mysterious and ancient runes engraved on it. At this moment, a figure in a gray robe stood in the center, and his sight seemed to pass through space and looked at the underground world. "It's begun." He gently raised his finger, and a metallic luster appeared on his fingertips. As the faint light sprinkled in front of him, his appearance gradually became clear. It had a metallic face and a metallic body. The silver-white metal was like human skin, and it changed slightly with his expression. There was a special device on his chest. It was a clock that could not be described in words. There were countless tiny runes on it, and there were special marks on the 12 notches. It looked like the pattern of the 12 zodiac signs. The clock was still ticking. He looked into the distance and murmured, "I don't have much time left. Maybe the brilliance of the arcane can bloom again. Maybe everything will be buried by time. Only time will tell us the answer. Only time will tell everything. Thank you, Dirklina. May you be eternally in time." A space crack leading to the unknown place. In front of this man made entirely of metal, there was a space as bright as the galaxy. In the center of the space, there was a dragon sleeping. With its breathing, time and space gradually distorted. Time dragon. There was only one existence in the entire multiverse that could distort time and space like this. Chapter 428. There was a faint smell of sulfur in the air. The environment in the Underdark was very bad. Some places even had underground volcanoes that could erupt at any time. Especially when they were close to the city of the Grey Dwarves, the faint smell of sulfur was even more obvious. The Grey Dwarves inherited the dwarves' usual attitude of seeking death. They liked to build their cities near volcanoes, or directly dig through the ground to draw out the underground magma. In terms of forging skills, the Grey Dwarves' skills were far superior to the surface dwarves because they often encountered blacksmith masters who could forge +3 and +4 weapons. Unfortunately, the materials of the weapons in the Underdark were special. Many of them would become a pile of scrap iron if they were brought to the surface world. The Grey Dwarves were the best source of slaves in the Underdark. They had been ruled by the Mind Flayer for a long time. Although they were now free from the control of the Mind Flayer, there were still a large number of captured Grey Dwarven slaves in the city of the Drows. Slavery was deeply ingrained in this race. Even if they broke free from the control of the Mind Flayer, they were still regarded as a source of slaves by many creatures. In a city of Drows, the number of Grey Dwarven slaves may reach 1/10 or 2/10 of the total population. The light dimmed again. Soren heard the sound of flowing spring water. After passing through a towering stone forest, a white mist appeared in front of them. Soren remembered this place. Although the environment in the Underdark was very bad, there was also a good thing. Hot springs. In fact, there were many hot springs in the Underdark that could be developed, and the one in front of them was the largest open-air sulfur hot spring nearby. The Drows advocated intrigue, the Grey Dwarves' brains were full of iron lumps, and the mainstream races in the Underdark did not seem to realize the value of hot springs. In the end, a team of adventurers from the surface world carried out a simple development and turned this place into a gathering point for exploring the Underdark. The water here seems good. The Lolita dragon sniffed with her eyes closed. She seemed to like the smell of sulfur. The temperature of the spring water was actually quite high, about 50 degrees, but for a dragon, it was negligible. The little Lolita reached out and took a sip of the spring water, then turned around and looked at Soren with wide eyes. She said hopefully, "Soren, can I take a bath here?" There was no sun in the Underdark. Therefore, it was easy to lose track of time. Many cities in the Underdark had a light source, which was actually some kind of obelisk that emitted light. Soren roughly calculated the travel time and nodded. "Let's rest here for an hour. I'll go prepare some food." With that, he kicked the grey dwarf beside him. Soren turned around and asked in a low voice, "Are the furnaces in Gleck City still lit up?" "Furnace fire?" The grey dwarf's expression was a little blank, but he still hurriedly nodded. "The fires in Gleck City have never been extinguished." "Is it still lit up?" Soren fell into deep thought, then nodded and said, "Go set up a campfire and prepare some food. I don't think you're stupid enough to think of running away, right?" The grey dwarf quickly nodded. Soren glanced at him and casually tossed a torch over, asking him to take out some dried meat rations. "The fires in Gleck City haven't been extinguished yet." Soren sat down as if he was thinking about something. He murmured, "That means the divine artifact hasn't been completed yet. I don't know how long it will take these grey dwarves to make that thing. But it should be before the start of the Avatar crisis, right?" Soren thought about his own matters. After about a while, Lolita Dragon's light figure came from behind. "It's so comfortable." Lolita Dragon used her white little hands to tidy up her pale blonde hair and tied it into a pair of beautiful ponytails. Then she blinked her big eyes and looked at Soren. "Don't you want to take a bath? The water below is so comfortable. Soaking in it makes me feel lazy." Soren shook his head gently. The group stayed in place for a moment, then continued on their way to their destination. Before leaving, Soren couldn't help but look at Gleck City again. There was a divine artifact in this city. Or rather, a divine artifact that was being made. About 10 years ago, the grey dwarves of this city discovered a large vein of mithril while they were in the process of mining. This was quite a shocking amount of wealth. If it was leaked out, it might even lead to a crazy attack from the drows. Therefore, the ruler of Gleck City, Greybeard, blocked the news for a while and restricted all the grey dwarven craftsmen who knew the truth, not allowing them to leave. Since then, the fires in Gleck City had never been extinguished. Greybeard was using the mithril to forge a powerful equipment. Because they had been enslaved by the Mind Flayer, many grey dwarves had a certain level of psionic ability. Greybeard was the best among all the grey dwarves. Not only was he a legendary psionic warlock, profession level 21, but he was also a level 5 berserker and level 5 wizard at the same time. Greybeard made a mithril chain armor. It didn't affect his casting at all. Each buckle was engraved with runes, and all of them were personally engraved by him. Soren didn't know the specific attributes of this divine artifact. However, he knew that this mithril chain armor's defensive ability was equivalent to a full body plate armor plus 3. The entire mithril chain armor's buckles were engraved with runes. In addition to its powerful defensive ability, it was also enchanted with a lot of powerful spells. The most important thing was that this mithril chain armor was as light as a feather. It wouldn't interfere with the caster's battle at all. Even a wizard could easily wear it. This was why it was a divine artifact even though it wasn't made by a god. Greybeard wasn't easy to deal with. What was more troublesome was that he was the ruler of Gleck City. He was also a powerful legendary profession. Therefore, even if Soren had some plans for this divine artifact, he didn't have a clear idea. However, there was still some time before the divine artifact was completed. Soren felt that if he could enter the realm of the gods, he might have a chance to get his hands on this divine artifact. As a rogue and a wizard, it wasn't easy for Soren to find a divine artifact that he could use. Greybeard might not be one of the strongest people in the Underdark, but in the entire Underdark, he seemed to be the only one who could reach more than 400 points in both magic equipment forging and alchemy at the same time. As he got closer and closer to his destination, after solving some small problems, Soren finally saw the outline of an altar. It was already very broken. However, there were still powerful energy fluctuations around it. The last elemental stone. Soren's expression couldn't help but be slightly excited. At the same time, he turned around and looked at the Lolita dragon next to him. Chapter 429. The air seemed to be getting heavier. In the dark passage, a tall and burly figure slowly walked out. It was an orc with a strange appearance. Only a small tuft of hair was left standing. It was more than 2 meters tall, and its muscles were filled with terrifying explosive power. Unlike the exaggerated muscles of the barbarians, the orc's muscles were very refined. If one looked carefully, one could see that every muscle on the orc's body was quite powerful. It even contained more explosive power than Sauron's. The Sword Saint has arrived at the target location. The orc looked around with cold eyes, and then an invisible light appeared in its palm. It said directly in its mind, "There are no obstacles at the target location. Do you want to wait here?" Time passed little by little. About a minute or two later, a frivolous female voice sounded slowly, "The Sword Saint is on standby. The bait has entered the reserved area. The praise dog has appeared. Pay attention to the priests of the Queen of Spiders Church. There is no sign of the prey yet." The orc slowly nodded and replied, "The Sword Saint understands." "Is the elemental pool fully charged?" "The elemental fission wave blade can't be charged to the 5th grade of the artifact. I'm not sure if I can break the Queen of Spiders' celestial force field." The frivolous female voice sounded again, and said lightly, "Extracting the energy of the half-plane. It is estimated that the energy will reach its peak in 24 hours. The orc nodded again and said, "Understood. The Sword Saint is on standby, waiting for orders." Pada. Light footsteps came from the side of the passage. The Sword Saint, who stood motionless, suddenly turned around and looked at the darkness not far away. The figures of the demigod vampire and the Helphemer appeared in front of him. Shock. Not only was the Sword Saint a little shocked, but the demigod vampire and the Helphemer were also a little shocked. Both sides didn't notice each other in advance. This meant that their hiding ability was not much different. They didn't notice each other until the distance was close enough. The Sword Saint. The demigod vampire just glanced at it, and his expression changed slightly. Telepathy directly echoed in the Helphemer's mind, and he said in a deep voice, "The Sword Saint is above the legendary level." The Helphemer's answer was also very quick, "Hybrid orc. Doesn't seem to be from the material plane. It could be from the astral world." The demigod vampire's face remained unchanged, but his heart was in turmoil. He said solemnly, "Astral Sword Saint?" The Helphemer quietly held the magic flute tightly and replied, "It's possible." The demigod vampire said, "It seems to be very strong." Helphemer, "Stronger than me." The demigod vampire said, "How is that possible? Then wouldn't he be?" The Helphemer replied, "I can't determine his exact strength, but I'm sure he's from the astral world. There's some remnant astral world energy in his body." The demigod vampire said, "Could it be that they were attracted by the god of half-elves and rogues?" Helphemer, "It's possible. It seemed that there weren't many things that could attract such an existence other than the realm of the gods. But the god of rogues and half-elves didn't seem to match his power. Unless he's only interested in the godhood." The demigod vampire said, "Since he's an opponent, why don't we kill him in advance?" Helphemer, "The chances of winning aren't high. Moreover, we haven't even seen any traces of our prey yet, and we've already exchanged blows with an astral sword saint. Don't you think this is a bit of a loss?" The demigod vampire said, "It seems that this battle will be very difficult. Are many powerful people attracted by the godhood?" Helphemer, "I don't know. Let's act according to the circumstances." On the other side. After the orc sword saint found the two figures in front of him, he immediately used telepathy and said, "Unknown targets found. One of them is in the form of a saint, and the other seems to be the legendary Helpheimer. Would you like to clear the target as an obstacle?" After a while, in the mind of the orc sword saint, there was a cold voice that sounded like metal rubbing against each other, and it slowly said, "Don't act rashly. It's possible that they are other people attracted by the bait. If the other party is not hostile, let them leave. I have asked Butterfly to include them in the monitoring of the psionic force field. A bait may not be able to attract the prey to attack personally. I am recalculating the battle plan. The target of the saint form is the god of vampire, and it will be listed as the second bait to attract the queen of spiders." The orc sword saint nodded to the demigod vampire not far away and said in his mind, "Sword saint understands." There was a short silence. The demigod vampire glanced at the orc sword saint, who nodded slightly at him and said telepathically, "It seems that he has no intention of fighting with us. Helpheimer, that's best. We will leave directly from the side." The demigod vampire, "Are we leaving just like that? The astral sword saint is very rare. Don't you want to test his strength?" Helpheimer, "The sword saint is not testing the enemy, it will only become a battle of life and death. If we fight with him, the outcome will only be in a few seconds. This is not testing the enemy, but fighting with his life." The demigod vampire, "That's true. Then let's leave. But it's really a pity. I have never encountered such an enemy. It seems that the recent changes have attracted many strong people traveling in the astral world. Helpheimer, let's go. Such an astral world traveler rarely acts alone, and there may be companions nearby." There was not much contact between the two sides. The demigod vampire and the Helpheimer cautiously left through the side passage, while the orc blade master stood motionless. He waited until the target had completely disappeared before he retracted his gaze. "The target has left." A magnetic female voice sounded, "Understood. The target has been included in the detection range of the psionic power field. 80 kilometers away from the location of the orc sword saint." An expressionless monk stood on a towering stone pillar. His gaze was focused on the darkness in front of him as if he was observing something through the fog. "Monk has arrived at the designated location. Monk, stand by." A frivolous female voice sounded, "Stand by. Did you find anything unusual?" The monk replied, "Traces of wax demon have been found. The prey may have appeared, but the target's concealment ability is too high and did not appear in our detection range." Another cold metallic voice sounded, "Thaling number 5 has taken over the detection authority within 50 kilometers. Monk, prepare for battle. After the target appears, immediately clear the other obstacles nearby and ensure that there are no other disturbances near the prey." The monk nodded and said, "Monk understands." 50 kilometers away from the position of the monk, there seemed to be something in the twisted shadows. In front of him was a team of fully armed drows. On the left and right were petrifying lizard knights. Male drow rangers were scattered to protect them. In the middle was a group of female drow priests and spellcasters. Behind what looked like a drow matriarch, there were some terrible monsters with hideous faces. They were the legendary spider elves. A terrible monster with the upper body of a drow and the lower body of a giant spider. A twisted mind. A crazy desire for blood, and a terrible desire for destruction after the distortion of hatred. The spider elves were the losers of the internal struggle of the drows. They were transformed into such monsters by the power of the Queen of Spiders. They were also one of the most troublesome and annoying monsters in the Underdark. The shadows gradually disappeared. The team of drows was still moving forward, but there was a sight in the dark watching them. The rogue has found the target. A drow matriarch, petrifying lizard knights, and spider elves have appeared. We are sure that the prey has appeared. But the specific location of the target cannot be detected at present. A cold metallic voice sounded. Keep your distance, don't get too close to the target. Report the target's location at all times. The Queen of Spiders is likely to be hiding in the team. There was a slight trace in the dark. Understood. The elemental altar. Soren looked at the last elemental altar in front of him and could not help but clench his curved sword nervously. As long as he got the fourth elemental stone, wind, then he could proceed to the final challenge. The four elemental elders. After combining the four elemental stones, the wind elemental elder, the water elemental elder, the fire elemental elder, and the earth elemental elder would be summoned. They were all legendary level creatures. Only by defeating all of them would one be able to obtain the final spoils of war. A sealed fragment of divinity. This fragment of divinity came from an ancient evil god. Although it was only a broken fragment of divinity, it could still promote someone to the realm of demigod. Divinity plus divinity equals demigod realm. Soren had enough divinity in him. As long as he had divinity, he could advance to demigod at any time. Perhaps there would not be too much of a change in strength. However, there was one thing that was very important to Soren. As long as he advanced to the realm of demigod, Soren would be able to completely ignore the legendary spell, Time Stop. This legendary spell would be completely ineffective against him. No matter what level of spellcaster he faced, he would not sit still and wait for his death. This was the biggest benefit of advancing to the realm of demigod. Moreover, as long as Soren could raise his divinity level to minor divinity, then he could transform himself into saint form. Basically, he could ignore all spells from circle 1 to 3. The saint form had high resistance against low-level spells. Many spells could not even break through the energy field of the saint form. Only when he advanced to the realm of demigod could he be considered to have stepped into the realm of gods. P.S. There is one more update today. Please recommend it. Chapter 430. It was different from all the other elemental altars. This last elemental altar was almost a ruin. The stone pillars around the altar seemed to have been violently destroyed. Soren also found some traces that were not easy to judge. The initial estimate was that it should be more than 1,000 years old. Unless Soren's knowledge was involved in the field of archaeology, there was no way to analyze the situation here for the time being. But what Soren didn't expect was that he didn't see anything, but the Lolita dragon beside him noticed something. This place seems to be a temple. The Lolita dragon fiddled with her long pale blonde hair, a pair of beautiful ponytails swaying. She wrinkled her small nose and said to Soren, "It's a bit like the Temple of Elements, but it's almost destroyed. It's rare to see an elemental temple in the material plane." The elemental temple. Naturally, it was a temple that believed in the four main elemental gods. This kind of temple was very rare in the entire material plane. Even in the elemental plane, there were not many of them. The four main elemental gods were the existence of great divine power. They were the oldest gods and had divine power far beyond other gods. Therefore, their dependence on faith was also quite small. To some extent, they didn't rely on faith at all. There were very few believers in the material plane. The main elemental gods didn't care much about the mortal world, so such temples were rare in any era. Is the evil god sealed here related to the elemental gods? Soren frowned and looked around, then began to look for the location of the elemental stones. He didn't know why there was no wind element here, but it was because of this that he felt more uneasy. The location of the elemental stones didn't change much. Soren quickly found the last elemental stone, wind, but before taking it out, Soren couldn't help but hesitate a little. Things had come to this point. No matter what he had to face, he couldn't give up, so Soren directly took it out. Rumble. The ground trembled violently. This somewhat familiar change made Soren highly vigilant. He said to the Lolita dragon next to him, "Be careful. Something powerful may appear later." As soon as his voice fell, the nearby airflow moved at high speed, and then the surrounding space was sealed. A huge figure appeared. It had a hazy body that looked half real and half illusory. It held a mysterious scimitar in its hand that was engraved with countless runes. Around its body was a rapidly rotating airflow. Its eyes that were filled with divinity fell upon Soren. Jinn, demigod. True enough. There was also a demigod-level jinn here. Mortal. A voice that reached the heart sounded in Soren's mind. The demigod jinn glanced at the elemental stone in Soren's hand and slowly said, "Did you take away the sealing stone?" The invisible gaze of divinity seemed to penetrate everything. The demigod jinn frowned and stared at Soren. "I didn't expect the other sealed crystals to be in your hands. Do you know the consequences of doing that?" Consequences? Soren only knew that this was a chain quest, and the final reward was a Tier 3 legendary elemental stone and a shard of divinity from a certain evil god. The demigod jinn sighed and slowly said, "Mortals are really ignorant and fearless. The elemental stone in your hand is a seal. Sealed in it is the evil god of the abyss that was killed in the first war between demons and elements. After unlocking the seal, you may be able to get some of his power, but it will also lead you to fall into the realm of the abyss. Mortal. Is it worth falling into the abyss for a little power?" Elemental war. Soren seemed to think of something, and some memories appeared in his mind instantly. Of course, the information in his memory was not quite comprehensive, but he still knew the general story. The bottomless abyss once had a very strong period. Many lords of the abyss, under the command of the demon monarch, unexpectedly ended a long civil war and decided to lead the demon army to the multiverse. At that time, they naively thought that they could unify the whole universe. Unfortunately, they were defeated in just the first battle. The demon army encountered the elemental legion, and their behavior angered the oldest wind elemental god. The main god of the wind elemental system woke up countless sleeping demigod jinns, and then beat the demon army back to the bottomless abyss. This was the only recorded battle record of the 4 elemental gods. In the long history of the multiverse, there seemed to be no other records that clearly recorded the 4 elemental gods fighting. No matter how the times changed, the elemental gods seemed to have always been indifferent. Or, they didn't care about these things at all. Even in the upcoming Avatar crisis, the 4 elemental gods were the least affected, because they didn't need any power of faith at all, and they didn't rely too much on the field of clergy. They themselves were one of the most powerful gods. Elements were the support of the whole world. No matter how the world changed, earth, water, wind, and fire would always exist. Even the battles between the gods rarely affected them. There was a passage that recorded the wind elemental god, Arcady. Arcady is one of the 4 elemental gods. She seems to be above time and has not changed in the long history. She has a little contact with other gods related to the wind elemental, such as Airdryphenia, guardian goddess of the winged elves, and Shondakal, god of travel and exploration, but their relationship is not very close. The wind elemental goddess seems to have always been indifferent to everything. Occasionally, she will respond to the prayers of her believers when she is bored. But in fact, this is just a pastime for her when she is bored, because she doesn't need believers to provide her with power. The only battle record of this goddess was when she led the wind elemental army to drive the demon army back to the bottomless abyss in the very ancient era. Since then, she seems to have been wandering in the long river of time. In the face of the demigod jinn's questioning, the figure of Vivian appeared in Soren's mind. His expression unexpectedly became very calm, and his eyes met the eyes of the demigod jinn, and he slowly said, "It's worth it. Maybe that's where I should go. I don't believe in fate. But I know that I am destined to go to the bottomless abyss." There was no way out. If he wanted to completely eliminate the hidden dangers of Vivian, then Soren was destined to go to the bottomless abyss. Only by entering the bottomless abyss could he truly eliminate the remaining divinity of the Dread Lord. Otherwise, it would always be a ticking time bomb. Soren absolutely did not want to see Vivian's body torn apart one day, and finally, a resurrected Dread Lord would walk out of her corpse. The god of tyranny was resurrected in this way. His descendants didn't react until the moment of their death. Their souls, divinity, and power were all swallowed by the god of tyranny. The only body left was also turned into the last prop for his resurrection. This was something that Soren absolutely could not see. For Vivian, he could even give up his own life. What was the point of falling into the bottomless abyss? The demigod Jin was silent. Soren's determined eyes seemed to contain some kind of power, and this strong belief made it silent. Finally, the demigod Jin slowly said, "Mortal. Since you have made your decision, then get ready for the final challenge. I hope that the bottomless abyss will not make your soul completely lost." The brilliance of divinity emerged. The 4 elemental stones on Soren's body emerged at the same time, and then turned into a mysterious light gate. Elder Wind Elemental, legendary creature. Elder Earth Elemental, legendary creature. Elder Fire Elemental, legendary creature. Elder Water Elemental, legendary creature. The 4 elemental stones gradually disappeared with the energy. When the portal connecting the elemental plane was completely completed, the figures of the 4 elemental elders also appeared in Soren's sight. They were second only to the elemental Jin and had legendary combat power. Chapter 431. 25 kilometers away. The barbarian who was moving forward suddenly stopped and looked at his companion who seemed to be in a daze. He said in a deep voice, "Dai? What's going on? Did you find something?" The masked woman closed her eyes as if she was sensing something. Psionic warlocks used a kind of energy similar to the power of the will. They were one of the few professions that were born with the telepathy ability. After a while, the masked woman opened her eyes and looked at Soren's direction. She frowned slightly and said slowly, "Nothing. It seems that someone summoned a demigod, but it shouldn't affect our plan." Demigod was the most common divine creature. Many legendary wizards could summon them. There were many demigod in the elemental plane. According to the ancient contract, they would respond to the summoning of many spellcasters. The more famous, Limited Wish, and Wish were to summon an elemental Jin. Wind elementals were the most likely to respond to such spells. Note, most of the time, Wish summons a wind Jin. The barbarian nodded slowly and said, "That's good." The 2 of them continued to walk forward. Soon, a very open area appeared in front of them. Unlike other places, the plants here were very lush. There were many natural stalactites around, and they could faintly hear the sound of underground spring water. When the 2 figures appeared in this open area, some large monsters also appeared. It was a group of hook horrors that occupied this area. For the 2 in front of them, the hook horrors were not even a threat. So, in just a blink of an eye, there were more than a few corpses on the ground. "This is the place." The masked woman stopped in the middle and said slowly, "This is the best place calculated by Thaling number 5. We will ambush the Queen of Spiders here." The barbarian looked around and said, "Understood." Immediately, he took out some strange silver-white metal and left a special mark in a hidden corner. This was the rune of a spell. Under normal circumstances, the barbarian who had more muscles than brains would not be able to grasp it. The fact that the barbarian in front of her could do this meant that he might have a part-time job, or he might have good knowledge. No matter what, it meant that this barbarian was quite dangerous. "Hey! Soren." Lolita moved her feet and came behind Soren. The 2 of them stood back to back, surrounded by the 4 summoned elemental elders. The little Loli's expression was a little worried, but there was also a trace of excitement in her eyes. She whispered, "Didn't you say that we just need to fight the small monsters? How could he summon such a powerful thing all of a sudden?" For legendary elemental life forms, even a powerful giant dragon would feel the same pressure, especially when the terrain of the Underdark made it difficult for her to use her full strength. Even if she could not defeat him, she could not transform into a giant dragon and fly away from the battle. It was just an accident. Soren's expression was quite serious. He looked at the demigod Jin in front of him. After making sure that the other party didn't intend to do it himself, he couldn't help but calm down a little. If the demigod Jin also joined the battle, then their chances of winning would be very low. However, facing 4 legendary elemental life forms at the same time, Soren also felt a lot of pressure in his heart. Back then, the other adventurers completed this mission by piling up human lives, crippling a total of 5 groups. Now, although Soren was stronger, his chances of winning alone were not very high. The only advantage he had was that he had coaxed a giant dragon to help him. Although he didn't know the specific strength of the little lowly dragon, she should be able to share a lot of the pressure. The little lowly's face seemed to be a little eager to try. The current situation made her feel like she was the protagonist of a legendary story. The great brass dragon princess and her little followers triggered a legendary seal, and then 4 powerful elemental elders appeared. Finally, after a difficult battle, Her Royal Highness and her little followers won the battle. Yes, yes, yes. That's how the story should be. The little lowly's mind was in a mess, but her battle intuition was very sharp. She whispered, "You deal with the Earth Elemental Elder and the Fire Elemental Elder. Leave the other 2 to me." The talent of a giant dragon was very amazing. With just a glance, the little lowly judged the best battle allocation. Soren had very high dexterity, so it was easier to deal with the Earth Elemental Elder. At the same time, the legendary curved sword in his hand was not ordinary at all. It exuded a cold aura, and it was twice the result with half the effort to deal with the Fire Elemental Elder. As for the other 2 Elemental Elders, especially the Wind Elemental Elder, which was the most difficult to deal with, naturally, it would be left to the story's protagonist, the Great Brass Dragon Princess, to deal with it. Right? Soren hesitated a little when he heard this, and then whispered, "Understood. Be careful." Boom! As the portal connecting to the elemental plane gradually disappeared, the 4 elemental elders also launched their attacks at the same time. The first to attack was the slowest Earth Elemental Elder. It waved its huge fist and directly smashed the ground in front of it. With a loud bang, a sharp stone pillar pierced out of the ground, and then instantly separated Soren and the little lowly dragon who were standing back to back. Not good. The wisdom of these elemental elders was not low. Elementals were not the same as other life forms. Many low-level elementals may not even have their own consciousness. However, the elemental elders in front of them were obviously different. As soon as the battle broke out, they cut off the battle formation of Soren and the little lowly dragon, directly separating them so that they could not support each other at any time. The second to attack was the Wind Elemental Elder. With the whistling wind sweeping past, the figure of the Wind Elemental Elder rushed directly over. "Soren. The other 2 are yours." There was a faint light in the little lowly dragon's eyes. Her petite body flew up directly, and she raised her hand and pointed at the Elder Water Elemental in front of her. Maze. A distorted space appeared. The figure of the Elder Water Elemental disappeared in an instant, and it had been sent into a different dimension maze. At this time, the little lowly dragon turned her eyes to the Wind Elemental in front of her. The 4 elemental planes of earth, water, wind, and fire seemed to be similar, but in fact, the strongest combat power had always been considered to be the Wind Elemental plane because they had defeated powerful abyss demons. From the perspective of combat power, the Wind Elemental was quite amazing both in terms of speed and lethality. What was even more frightening was that the Wind Elemental Elder generally had very powerful lightning-type spells. The Lord of Storms. He was a powerful god in the material plane, and also a terrifying existence that could control lightning and storms. The Wind Elemental realm could easily extend the power of lightning. Crackling lightning appeared. There was a jumping electric current in the body of the Wind Elemental Lord, accompanied by the whistling wind. A jumping lightning swept out directly. It turned out that the little lowly's judgment was correct. With her magic resistance, she had a more obvious advantage against lightning attacks. Soren, on the other hand, was in a very passive situation when he was being electrocuted. Evade sight. Shadow leap. Facing the 3 elemental elders who surrounded him, Soren's figure disappeared in an instant. Bad guy. The little lowly dragon's petite body suddenly stiffened, and she could not help but feel a little nervous because Soren was a legendary rogue. If he wanted to sneak away, these elemental elders would not be able to stop him. But if she stayed here, it would be a tragedy. Being besieged by 3 elemental elders at the same time was not a joke. Just at the moment when Soren's figure disappeared, the pressure she was under suddenly increased. She could not help but bite her pink lips and murmured, "I hope this guy won't leave me behind and run away." Flame, earth, wind. Although she temporarily trapped the water elemental elder with maze, when facing 3 legendary powers at the same time, the little loli's forehead could not help but sweat. "Why don't you do it?" The little loli dragon bit her lip with her white teeth and took a step back. She murmured, "How can I fight this bastard? I'm a girl. He actually used me as a meat shield. Shameless. Dirty." Chapter 432. From a tactical point of view. Soren's behavior was obviously correct, because in his view, although the Lolita dragon next to him looked like a little girl, her body was still a powerful dragon after all. As everyone knew, dragons had always been very resistant to beatings. So after Soren's figure disappeared, he began to look for a suitable entry point for the battle. The best entry point was naturally when the 3 elemental elders attacked the Lolita dragon at the same time. However, he obviously forgot to consider the feelings of the little loli. In the loli dragon's heart, she had already cursed Soren 10,000 times. She even cursed Soren with the words F***ck your mother. The 3 elemental elders put a lot of pressure on her. No matter how strong the dragon's talent was, she was still a dragon who had just reached adulthood. Moreover, the battle of the legendary level formed a suppression of numbers, so no matter how strong her strength was, it would be reduced. Rumble. It was only the first round of attacks, but the little Lolita's situation was not very good. Flames, lightning, rocks. The 3 elemental elders directly blocked her ability to fight back, and directly covered her with a powerful firepower net, forcing her to use blink to escape. Soren. The little loli's face was covered in dirt as she retreated at high speed. Her cute little face had a look of gnashing her teeth, and even a little bit of a sob could be heard. Of course. She would never admit this even if she was beaten to death. The first round of attacks finally ended. Even if the little Lolita had an instantaneous teleportation spell, she still suffered a few hits. But at this time, Soren's figure also appeared from the distorted shadows. The legendary curved sword Icing Death emitted a strange silver-white streamer, and the temperature of the blade had dropped below 0. With a flash of cold light, Soren instantly cut into the battlefield and slashed at the fire elemental elder in front of him. With the experience of dealing with the Baylor last time, the fire elemental elder should be the easiest enemy for him to deal with. Scorching flames raged out. But for Soren, who had the curved sword Icing Death, these flames were no threat at all. It was also a legendary creature, but the combat power of the Elder Fire Elemental was much lower than that of the Baylor. These scorching flames were instantly extinguished by the curved sword Icing Death. At the same time, the cold characteristics directly caused great damage to the Elder Fire Elemental. With just one slash, Soren had heavily injured the Elder Fire Elemental. The dark energy of Shadow Strike combined with the cold energy of the legendary curved sword, Icing Death, caused hundreds of damage to the Elder Fire Elemental in an instant. Sword form, spinning strike. Soren knew that the outcome of a legendary level battle could be decided in an instant. Therefore, he did not hesitate to follow up with another attack even though the Elder Fire Elemental was heavily injured. Risking being hit by the Elder Earth Elemental, Soren once again swung his sword at the enemy in front of him. Bang! Soren's body was sent flying, and he spat out a mouthful of blood in midair. The terrible force made his sternum cave in, and he even hit the wall behind him directly, leaving a faint trace. However, Soren's result at the cost of being hit head-on was also quite brilliant. The Elder Fire Elemental was only able to withstand less than one round of attacks from Soren, and it was already in a state of near death. The legendary curved sword Icing Death had an unexpectedly powerful lethality against it. Good chance. Facing the Elder Fire Elemental who was in a state of near death, the Lolita dragon instantly launched Disintegrate. With a green light flying out, the Elder Fire Elemental, whose vitality was already very weak, was completely disintegrated in an instant. One was killed. Soren coughed and stood up, swallowing back the blood in his throat. The earth elemental had a natural strength advantage. After advancing into the legendary realm, its strength adjustment value was very high. Just now, it actually hurt him badly. However, since an elder fire elemental had been killed, the next battle would be much easier. Before the elder water elemental came out of the maze, they temporarily gained a one-on-one advantage, and the pressure on both of them was reduced too much. Evade sight. Soren did not hesitate to enter stealth again. For him who had the anti-detection cloak, as long as he entered stealth, the elder fire elemental in front of him would not be able to find him. Basically, he did not have to worry about being attacked by them. Out of battle again. The little Lolita dragon had a hateful expression, but she could not do anything to Soren. After all, he was a rogue. Against such a legendary level monster, unless he transformed into his slaughter form, he would definitely suffer heavy injuries. The Lolita dragon once again became the primary target of attack. Being used as a meat shield by Soren angered her to death. This was not her ideal battle scenario at all. Shouldn't her ideal battle be Soren standing in front of her, and then she would stand behind him elegantly and confidently, casting spells? Note, she thought that Soren would treat her as a spellcaster, but in fact, Soren treated her as a meat shield. This abominable guy did not follow the plot of the novel at all. Twisted shadows. Soren's figure wandered around the edge of the battle circle, looking for a chance to break in and seriously injure the opponent. The high-speed Elder Wind Elemental was not in his consideration. Soren's target was the Elder Earth Elemental, who looked quite slow but had thick skin. Shadow Strike. Sword form, beheading. The cold light instantly cut through the air and directly cut towards the Elder Earth Elemental in front of him. Soren felt as if he had cut into a solid marble, and Icing Death's blade had already exhausted its strength just by sinking into it. But it didn't matter. Soren never expected physical attacks to easily defeat the Earth Elemental. So the moment he pulled out his curved sword, he also quickly raised his hand and pressed it on the back of the Elder Earth Elemental. Vampiric Touch, Divinity. A row of data appeared, activated spell-like ability, Vampiric Touch, Divinity. The target's immunity resistance failed. Negative energy erodes the target's vitality. Vitality transferred to your own body. You've caused 60 points of energy damage to the target. You've recovered 60 points of vitality. A special life energy was transferred to Soren's body. This energy was as heavy as the earth. It did not have the vitality of life that he had felt before, but it had a heavy texture. Under the effect of this energy, Soren's injuries recovered rapidly, and his own state gradually recovered to a state of minor injury. P.S. The power was out during the day, so it could only be released at the same time. Chapter 433. Vampiric Touch. As long as the enemy had vitality, this spell would work, and the damage it caused was quite stable. The divine power gave it a strong spell penetration ability. So far, Soren had not failed to cast it. It was like a fixed damage ability for Soren, reducing the opponent's vitality and healing his own injuries. Unfortunately, it could only be used once a day, and Soren could only use it when he was in a desperate situation. As for the spell, Vampiric Touch, because it was not a natural spell-like ability, and there was no divine power to support it, even if Soren remembered it, he had to cast it first and then touch the target before it could take effect. Note, casting time is about 1.5 seconds. In this case, it was not divinity that affected the spell, but the spell power brought by his wizard level. The injury recovered at an amazing speed. Soren caused hundreds of damage in an instant, but unfortunately, it was not fatal to the Elder Earth Elemental. However, this result was completely within Soren's expectations. At the moment when he pulled away, Soren's fingertips also flew out a piece of arcane missile. Perhaps this kind of attack had limited effect on dragons, but it was quite effective on other legendary creatures. After all, creatures like dragons that were born with all kinds of resistance and could increase their strength while sleeping were still rare. Arcane Missile X6. The arcane missile whistled out and hit the Elder Earth Elemental. Although the damage caused was greatly reduced, it still accumulated 70 to 80 points of damage. 30 arcane missiles were fired at once. Although each missile only dealt 2 points of damage, it could not take advantage of the advantage of quantity. In the beginning, the wizard's arcane explosion relied on a huge number of enemies. As long as the enemy was not completely immune to the damage of arcane missiles, then if 50 missiles were not enough, then 100 missiles would be used. All kinds of spell enhancement and spell maximization would be used to increase the spell level, and finally a torrential explosion would kill the enemy. Unfortunately, this tactic could be broken by a one-circle shield in advance. Otherwise, it would be a terrible burst of damage. Mel's Minute Meteor. Soren pulled away after a round of explosion, and at the same time, he quickly retreated and cast his big move. However, what surprised him a little was that a message prompt suddenly appeared at this time. Breakthrough in ability. You've made new breakthroughs in battle after battle. You've received information about combat spellcasting. You've mastered a new specialty, combat casting. Accident. Soren didn't expect this either. The combat casting ability actually had a breakthrough in this situation, but what surprised him even more was that when he completed the Mel's Minute Meteors, the second data display appeared again, breakthrough in ability. You've grasped more experience and skills in battle. Your understanding of spellcasting has reached a new height. You've obtained information about the ability, mobile casting. Mobile casting. It was an advanced ability for combat spellcasting and a prerequisite for flight spellcasting. It wasn't the first time that Soren had used this ability. However, it was only now that the new data had appeared. The appearance of 2 data prompts at one time made Soren's spirit shake. At his level of strength, every improvement was quite obvious. Being able to master 2 fairly important basic abilities through battle meant that he would have enough ability points to master more powerful legendary abilities in the future. Accumulation, precipitation, brewing. The battles over and over again were not without gains, but it took a relatively long time to trigger qualitative changes from quantitative changes. Rumble. After mastering the ability, combat casting, Soren's combat skills suddenly became much more flexible. The flames of the minute meteors roared out and enveloped the Elder Earth Elemental in it. With Soren's attack speed, the full-force explosion was completely a close-range bombardment attack. Even the figure of the Elder Earth Elemental was covered by dust. Why do I feel that this guy is getting more and more powerful? Lolita Dragon couldn't help but look at Soren, and a hint of surprise appeared in her eyes. She murmured, "This guy is really a freak." Dragon wing form. Little Lolita took a deep breath, and a pair of huge brass dragon wings instantly opened on her back. Her figure rose into the air and chased after the Elder Wind Elemental in front of her. Since Soren could suppress the Elder Earth Elemental, she must contain the most difficult Elder Wind Elemental. Blasphemy, pain. As soon as the bombardment of Mel's Minute Meteors ended, Soren launched the ability, Blasphemy, that he had recently mastered. This was a spell-like ability that was effective against any enemy, a power that directly acted on the soul and spirit. A power that came from the realm of the gods. The great pain directly acted on the spirit of the Elder Earth Elemental, which made it tremble all over. Shadow jump. Soren's figure disappeared into the darkness, and the surrounding space began to distort. A gray color covered everything. His figure shuttled through the shadow plane, and the cold light directly penetrated the body of the Elder Earth Elemental. Bang! The heavy body fell to the ground. A row of data appeared in front of Soren's eyes, killed Elder Earth Elemental. Extracting target's soul energy. You've gained 48,000 slaughter EXP. The Elder Earth Elemental died. The difficulty of the battle was reduced a lot. Soren took a little breath and began to target the most difficult Elder Wind Elemental. However, it seemed that he didn't need to do anything. Little Lolita had no problem fighting an Elder Earth Elemental alone. In that case, Soren was calm. He went back into the shadows and began to look for the last chance to finish off the Elder Earth Elemental. There was never enough slaughter EXP. It was easier to find opportunities to cut in outside the battle. An Elder Earth Elemental had close to 50,000 slaughter EXP, which was a big source of income for Soren. If it was up to him to kill these 4 Elders Earth Elemental alone, it would probably be enough to raise a wizard level. Unfortunately, it was not a wise choice to fight alone. He had no confidence at all if he didn't transform into slaughter form. Even if he transformed, he only had a 50 to 60% chance. The battle was still going on. As soon as little Lolita saw Soren's figure disappear again, she was furious. In this case, he didn't hurry over to help. He didn't even know where to go. She really wanted to bite him to death. Dragon's breath. Facing the Elder Wind Elemental who moved at high speed, little Lolita couldn't help but take a deep breath. Her small chest became bulging, and then a scorching flame swept out. The dragon's breath attack was very lethal. At the same time, at the moment when the dragon's breath was over, Soren's figure also reappeared. With a cold light, the Elder Wind Elemental ended in his hands. The 3 Elders Earth Elemental were dead. The last Elder Water Elemental was not challenging at all. The effect of maze seemed to still be there, and the Elder Water Elemental had not appeared yet. Little Lolita waved her hand gently. It seemed to be some kind of special spell, and then the figure of the Elder Water Elemental appeared. Humph. Little Lolita glared at Soren angrily and stood aside with her arms crossed. It seemed that she had no intention of helping at all. This guy is too shameless. I'll just let him deal with the last Elder Water Elemental by himself. I'm so angry. There was almost no difficulty in fighting an Elder Water Elemental alone. Soren's next battle was very easy. But as the battle ended, little Lolita finally made a move. She bit Soren. The little Loli, who had been holding her breath for a long time, finally took a bite on Soren's arm after defeating all the enemies, leaving a row of clear and neat teeth marks. Then, she lifted her leg and kicked twice as if to vent her anger. Finally, she glared at Soren hatefully, as if she wanted to take another bite. This bastard. I'm so cute and beautiful. He actually used me as a meat shield. On an open flat ground. The monk sat cross-legged on a towering stone pillar. He seemed to be resting with his eyes closed, but his spirit was always paying attention to the surrounding environment. At this moment, he suddenly opened his eyes, and a threatening light flashed in his eyes. The voice of the rogue sounded in his mind, "The target has appeared. The target has appeared. The bait has entered the predetermined range. The prey has appeared. Everyone, get ready for battle." A fierce aura instantly shrouded the surroundings. The monk stood up at once. He looked a little nervous. He couldn't help but take a deep breath and said, "The monk is on standby. Ready to enter the battle at any time." A cold voice with a metallic taste sounded slowly, "The clock is ready. Everyone, get ready for battle. The prey has appeared. The monk is on standby. After the battle begins, immediately clear the targets near the prey." A series of voices sounded in his mind. Sword Saint is on standby. Rogue is on standby. Barbarian is on standby. Thaling number 3 is ready. Thaling number 2 has taken over the command of the Arcane Tower. Thaling number 1 has completed the calculation of the half-plane confinement. After the prey has appeared, the half-plane confinement will be activated. Along with the voices, a female voice sounded. Finally, a magnetic female voice rang out, "Synchronized telepathic connection established. Psionic energy field sensing sharing. Tactical simulation officially activated. All units, get ready for battle at any time. Psionic transmission has completed synchronization. P.S. I'll continue to write, but I won't be able to finish it. I'll finish the combat chapters in one go tomorrow." Chapter 434. It was a piece of translucent diamond-shaped crystal. Soren's hand that was holding it could not help but tremble slightly. Accompanied by a faint aura, this strange crystal gradually disappeared from his palm like ice and snow gradually melting. An indescribable power surged into his body, and Soren's skin suddenly seemed to have a faint fluorescence. This scene only lasted for a moment, and then his whole person was no different from before. If there was a difference, it was that his eyes seemed to have an indescribable magic, and anyone who looked at his eyes could not help but feel a trace of awe. The Shard of Divinity. There were very few records about it in the material plane, because in the long history, there were not many gods that fell in the mortal world. Unless there was a situation like the Avatar crisis, even if the gods were killed, the power would be obtained by the victor. The only record of the Shard of Divinity in the mortal world was Tears of Baal, a special shard of divinity condensed by the son of God of Massacre. It not only contained the power of the god of Massacre, but also the divinity of the god of Massacre. Tears of Baal only appeared for a short time in history. Since then, there were basically no other records related to the Shard of Divinity. A row of data appeared in front of his eyes, absorbing the Shard of Divinity. Divine Power Conversion. Fusing with the Shard of Divinity. Unknown residual consciousness found. Forced test of will triggered. Test of will passed. Unknown residual consciousness completely wiped out. Successfully absorbed the Shard of Divinity. You have gained 3 Shard of Divinity. Insufficient Shard of Divinity. You have no divine position. Unable to convert divine power. The minimum requirement for converting divine power is minor Shard of Divinity. Divine power activated. Shard of Divinity activated. Divinity domain mutation triggered. You begin to transform into a demigod form. You are constructing your own laws. You are constructing your own domain. You have gained a new characteristic, demigod. You are immune to the legendary spell, Time Stop. Dense amounts of data appeared. A large amount of data appeared in front of Soren's eyes. Just like when he first woke up, he even felt a little dizzy. Somehow, he seemed to have sensed a change. This change did not just come from his body, but was also related to these data streams. The power of divinity seemed to have seeped into it, and it was undergoing some kind of slow change that he could not understand. This change couldn't be described with words, but Soren could feel it and realize how shocking it was. This reminded him of the first adventurer who ascended to godhood. Gods. Their existence wasn't that simple. As high and mighty gods, although they had great power, they also had many things to do. One of the things that occupied most of their time was to answer the prayers of all the believers, and then to bestow divine spells upon the priests. There was a theory. The brain domain of gods was far beyond the imagination of mortals. Sometimes they were like a super biological brain, constantly receiving and responding to the prayers of the believers, and at the same time transforming the power of faith into divine power to bestow divine spells upon the priests. This was quite a complicated process, so some gods gave up their clergy, and even like the 4 main elemental gods, they didn't develop many believers at all. Under normal circumstances, unless the gods had fallen, they needed to respond to the prayers of all the priests who believed in them every day, and transform the power of faith to bestow divine spells upon them. There was an adventurer who ascended to godhood. He had gained great power, but he also encountered a problem. The adventurer had to adapt to the prayers of the believers, and then slowly respond to the divine spells they bestowed upon him. This process took him a long time to adjust. Therefore, in addition to the original hero template, with a total natural attribute of more than 90 points, there was also a divine template that was obtained after ascending to godhood. The existence of the divine template was to deal with the prayers of the believers. Soren had a special feeling, that was, the flow of data in his body seemed to be changing in this direction under the power of divinity and divinity. The jumping data in front of him seemed to be filled with some kind of power, and it made him feel a slight electric current in his brain. He still couldn't describe it in words, but he knew that some changes were going on. At this time, Soren's data was very different from the past. Name, Soren, demigod, race, half-elf, son of slaughter. Attributes: strength 19, +7, giant strength +6, dexterity 27, +2, constitution 22, +1, intelligence 22, +2, wisdom 16, +1, charm 19, +3, Mo's sorrow +2, alignment, lawful evil profession, level 10 commoner, level 7 thief, 03065000, level 8 shadow dancer, 0375000, level 10 wizard, 01485000, grade 5, health points, 272345, sturdy, experience points, 135075, slaughter exp, 1545, profession exp, unassigned, skill points. None attribute points, none legend level, 42 divinity points, 16, minor divinity, requires 30 points to upgrade, minor divinity. Divinity points, 3, requires 10 points to upgrade, minor divinity. Status, normal basic skills, sneak 285, literacy 280, steal 85, pick lock 9, trap 85, focus 75, negotiate 105, appraise 65, deceive 60, intimidation 145, taunt 30, act 35, listen 55, dodge 145, parry 75, block 60, heal 85, search 55, detect 70, copy scroll 50, spell identification 45, survival 80, use magic device 55, cooking 40, alchemy 30. Legendary skills, omnipotent hands, legendary evasion, legendary battle skills, epic dexterity special abilities, blessing of the misfortune goddess, blessing of the ocean goddess, dragon blood baptism LV2, heart of slaughter, slayer, death walker, ascetic, erudite, blasphemy, once per day, personal abilities, nimble left hand, eidetic memory, perseverance, encyclopedic knowledge, skilled spellcasting, reflex evasion, intuitive evasion, roll evasion, agile movement, evade sight, dark vision, combat. Spellcasting, spell control, empower spell, maximize spell, minor spell resistance, minor cold resistance, medium fire resistance, minor poison resistance, minor electric resistance, greater dual wielding, sturdy, regeneration, intermediate, telepathy 10 feet. Profession abilities, shadow control, nimble mind, military weapon, proficiency, curved sword, legendary. Combat skills, summon shadow, shadow jump, 200 shadow strike, shadow jump, 2 times, fear gaze, divine, fear, divine, vampiric touch, divine, counterspell, sword form, heavy hack, sword form, horizontal slash, sword form, behead, sword form, waist chop, sword form, spinning strike. In a dark passage, a wretched figure was running for his life. His whole body seemed to be shrouded in shadows, and his appearance could not be seen clearly. Target has appeared. The prey is being attracted to the designated area. Everyone, get ready for battle. The Queen of Spiders, Rose, has been spotted. The prey has been exposed. Psionic warlocks, get ready to mark the target. 10 kilometers away from the designated location. Other saints have been spotted approaching. The target is the god of vampires. Seems to be attracted by the bait as well. Recalculating the battle plan. Do you want to intercept the target? The god of vampires is closing the distance at high speed. The current distance is 8 kilometers. A series of telepathic communications echoed. Accompanied by a cold thawing voice, a metallic male voice sounded in the minds of the god slayers, saying slowly, cancel the interception plan. Let them and the bait leave. Our target is the Queen of Spiders. Wait for the prey to appear in the designated area. In an instant, Soren's body seemed to have been hit by an electric current. Just as he completed the fusion of the shard of divinity, he also seemed to have sensed that something was gradually approaching him. This was a feeling that belonged to the realm of the gods. Chapter 435. Soren's figure moved forward in the shadows. Behind him was the Lolita dragon, who was carefully lurking while casting greater invisibility. Although he knew that such a move was very dangerous, Soren still couldn't resist the curiosity in his heart and was ready to come over and check it out. This was the first special feeling he had after becoming a demigod. Although he had just advanced into the realm of demigod, did not master the special ability of damage immunity, and did not advance into the form of a saint, Soren had reached the realm of demigod after all. Although there was not much change in the data display, the hidden immunity of a demigod was still there. In fact, his actual combat power had increased by at least 30% because from now on, the probability of low-grade spells working on him was very low. In addition, there was the Cloak of Proof Against Detection, which was almost a divine artifact for rogues. In case of any special situation, Soren could easily escape the battle. In this regard, the Cloak of Proof Against Detection was tested by the Goddess of Magic, who was a greater divine power. Even the Goddess of Magic could not see the person wearing this equipment without using some special means. As for the Lolita dragon following behind, Soren really couldn't do anything about her. Logically speaking, it was best if she didn't follow him. This way, Soren could stay and leave alone if he wanted to. But he couldn't resist the Lolita dragon's princess temper. If she insisted on following, Soren couldn't do anything about it. Moreover, she was more or less a legendary combat power. If the target of the sense was really the god of half-elves and rogues, in Soren's memory, then she might really be able to help Soren a lot. As the two gradually moved forward, the vision ahead gradually widened, and the underground passage became an empty flat ground. There was a forest of stone pillars in front of them, and they couldn't see any further. Soren didn't dare to get too close. Just as Soren was about to tiptoe over to see the situation, a magnetic and flirtatious female voice sounded in his mind, and slowly said, "So it's you, little guy. Stay where you are and don't move. This level of battle is not something you can get involved in. Be careful not to lose your life." He stiffened. Soren's body instantly froze on the spot. There was no one around him, and no one could get close to him without him noticing. The voice was directly transmitted into his mind. Psionic Warlock. Soren immediately recalled the psionic force field he had sensed earlier. His instincts told him that this was a psionic warlock with a profession level of at least 30. This kind of existence was definitely something he could easily deal with. In fact, there was no such existence in the entire material plane. Psionic warlocks of this level could only be found in the astral plane. Wang. It was as if the entire space was shaking. Just as Soren took a cautious step back, he saw the stone pillars in front of him collapse. Then, in the dust, about 300 meters away, a group of drows appeared in Soren's sight. Not good. With just a glance, Soren, who was very familiar with the Underdark, knew that this was a standard guard of the drows. Drow Ranger, Drow Warrior, Spider Elf, Lolth Priest. What is she going to do? Many thoughts flashed through Soren's mind, but he still couldn't figure it out. He thought to himself, is she going to kill this drows? His thoughts were still not clear. The next moment, the change had already exceeded Soren's expectations. A special figure appeared in midair. No one knew when he appeared. All that could be seen was his silver-white metallic arm and his lifelike face made of metal. There was a clock-like device in front of his chest. When the strange metal man pressed his hand on his chest, the clock on it stopped immediately. Time froze at this moment. Something unimaginable to Soren happened. Some kind of unpredictable power spread out, and then everything nearby stopped in an instant. Including Soren, who was already a demigod. A row of data appeared, affected by the effect of clockwork nirvana. Demigod domain has failed. Time has stopped. Duration, 1 second. Clockwork nirvana. Clockwork nirvana's mechanical mirror? This information made Soren's heart tremble as if he had thought of something. However, what happened in the next moment left him with no time to think so much. Clockwork nirvana has been activated. Battle begins. Phalang number 1 has activated demiplane imprisonment. All units, get ready for battle. I don't have much time left. The silver-white figure floated in midair. As the clock on his chest stopped, the arcane light on his body gradually dimmed, as if he had lost some kind of powerful magic. Telepathy had been established. Synchronized telepathy had been transmitted to the minds of all the combat units nearby. A cold mechanical voice sounded. Thaling number 1 has taken over the control of the demiplane. Activating demiplane imprisonment. Synchronizing the material plane space. Activating spatial fold. Synchronizing the space of different dimensions. Demiplane energy transmission. Locked onto the target space within 15 meters. Spider Queen, Lolth, has been discovered. Demiplane imprisonment has been established. Warning. Warning. Unknown power has been activated. Target has activated celestial domain. Demiplane energy is rapidly consumed. Current energy consumption is 1%. 2%. 3%. The time was synchronized within 1 second. The metal man's voice sounded almost at the same time, and he said slowly, Demiplane imprisonment has been established. We have less than 100 seconds left. Everyone, get ready to fight at any time. The time was synchronized 1 second later. 25 kilometers away from the battlefield, the figure of the monk stood up. Thaling number 2 has taken over the teleportation authority of different dimensions. Space waymark locked. Psionic node locked. Extracting the energy of different dimensions. Activating dimensional portal number 1. Coordinates X87 Y157. A dimensional portal opened. It was less than 3 meters away from the monk. His figure instantly bowed and leaped into the dimensional portal. The next moment, he appeared in Soren's field of vision, just above the drow guards. Lunar shade style. The figure of the monk turned into a shadow and swooped down directly from the air. Sunflame style. As the golden palms slammed together, scorching flames and surging heat waves raged out. The huge impact swept everything within 30 meters and directly scattered the drow guards. However, among the figures that were sent flying, there was a strange figure that was frozen on the spot. The space around her body was distorted, as if it was imprisoning her on the spot. Shadowless kick. Whirlwind kick. Gale palm. Out of sight. The storm-like attacks raged out, but the target was not the figure imprisoned in place, but the other drows nearby. In an instant. With the figure imprisoned in place as the center, there was no one else within 20 meters. Pada. The figure of the monk landed and stood in place as if he was meditating. Bursting out so many killing moves in just 1 or 2 seconds, even the incarnation of a god would be a huge burden. The monk has completed the mission. The target's surroundings have been cleared. Barbarians, prepare to relay. A cold voice sounded again, space waymark locked. Psionic node locked. Extracting the energy of another dimension. Opening the second dimensional portal. Coordinates X57 Y127. The second dimensional portal is open. Launching, magic-powered armor type 3. Unknown space. In this huge half-bit wall, there was a towering arcane tower. With the voice of Thaling number 2, 2 huge magic-powered armors disappeared from the 5th floor of the arcane tower, and then appeared on the battlefield and quickly dispersed to the left and right positions. However, they did not join the battle, but were in a defensive posture. Space waymark locked. Psionic node locked. Extracting the energy of another dimension. Opening the third dimensional portal. Coordinates X37 Y107. 30 kilometers away in a straight line. A portal from another dimension appeared in front of the barbarian. The barbarian, who had been on standby, let out a wild roar. Then, his whole body emitted a crackling sound. His burly body suddenly became like a giant. His muscles were full of explosive power. It was so shocking. Epic rage. The barbarian's figure passed through the dimensional portal, holding a huge battle axe in both hands, and then roared and smashed it to the ground. Earth-splitting cut. The terrible power broke out, and the ground around was completely shattered. With the figure imprisoned in the half-bit wall as the center, the 20-meter area around it completely collapsed. A cold metallic voice sounded, "Target is in a state of levitation. Target activated divine energy field. Calculating the consumption of divine energy field. Current attack consumption is 3%. It is estimated that the target's divine energy field can be broken after 33 attacks of the same strength. Target's divine energy field shield is too strong. Activating the backup plan. Thaling number 4 took over the command of the battle. Activating the cross-dimensional space tactical strike plan. Unknown half-bit wall. At the top of the arcane tower, a half-illusory figure appeared and said coldly, Thaling number 4 took over the command of the battle. Activating the cross-dimensional space strike tactic. Synchronizing the calculation of the dimensional portal. Activating the dimensional portal. Super Arcane Crystal Pulse Cannon Type 4 began to charge. Current charging progress is 10%, 20%, 30%. Cross-dimensional space coordinate locked. Portal stabilized. Super Arcane Crystal Pulse Cannon Type 4 completed charging. Locking the target's spatial position. Initiating the cross-dimensional tactical strike. P.S. Stocks exploded, and my vitality was greatly damaged. I also got a little heatstroke. I don't know how I'm writing in this state. 2 updates today. Chapter 436. It's her. When the other obstacles on the battlefield were cleared, Soren finally saw the appearance of the imprisoned drow. Almost instantly, Soren's body trembled involuntarily, and then there was a hint of fear in his eyes. There were not many existences in the entire multiverse that could make him feel fear, and there seemed to be only one existence in the Underdark that could make Soren feel fear. That was the Queen of Spiders, Lolth. The absolute ruler of the Underdark, the supreme ruler of the infernal plane. The former Queen of the Elves, the current Queen of Spiders. In terms of appearance, the Queen of Spiders should be a very, very beautiful woman. No matter how the outside world vilified her, saying that she looked like a big spider, one thing that could not be changed was that the Queen of Spiders was the Queen of the Elves. As the first wife of the Elves' main god, she was almost more beautiful than most of the goddesses in terms of appearance. Therefore, everyone who saw the Queen of Spiders for the first time would be shocked by her beautiful appearance. Even in the form of a drow, her charm could not be hidden. She was one of the 2 most beautiful women in the abyss. She was also one of the 2 most terrifying women in the abyss. The other was the Queen of Succubus, who was also a terrible existence that Soren was extremely afraid of. Ever since the Queen of Spiders had descended the Holy Kingdom, demon prison, into the bottomless abyss, the 2 terrifying goddesses had never stopped fighting. The Queen of Spiders was undoubtedly a goddess full of ambition. Her cruelty, insidiousness, and viciousness were enough to make everyone afraid. The Queen of Succubus was even more so. From a peerless plaything that the demon lords fought over, she became an important fallen demon in the abyss. She had schemed to kill 2 generations of demon princes, and she was definitely a nightmare in the hearts of many demon lords. Soren's fear of them was not only based on their strength, but also because of their cruelty and insidiousness. The Queen of Spiders was a goddess who loved to plot. They wanted to kill the Queen of Spiders? Soren didn't even need to think about it. Today's battle was bound to be a failure. The Queen of Spiders could not be killed. Her final defeat was only because she stood against the majority of the gods. Moreover, the Avatar crisis had not yet begun. Even if the Queen of Spiders' body came to the material plane, the connection with her god's kingdom, Abyss Demon Prison, was still there. How could a deity that could mobilize the terrifying power of the divine kingdom be easily killed by others? Go. The effect of clockwork nirvana only lasted for a second. Soren pulled the Lolita dragon next to him and frantically retreated to the back. This kind of assassination would only enrage the Queen of Spiders. Once the Queen of Spiders was enraged, they might be implicated if they continued to stay. The super arcane crystal pulse cannon type 4 is fully charged. Lock onto the coordinates of the dimensional space. Launch countdown 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Unknown half plane. A terrifying energy gathered at the top of the arcane tower and finally turned into a purple light that flew out. The trajectory of the super arcane crystal pulse cannon, type 4, pierced through the air. Within the range of its trajectory was an open door to a different dimension. The purple energy beam passed through the dimension and appeared on the battlefield of the Underdark the next moment. Then a solid divine force field appeared around the Queen of Spiders' body. The energy light of the super arcane crystal pulse cannon type 4 collided violently with the divine force field on the Queen of Spiders' body. The terrible power made the whole space begin to tremble, and everything around seemed to be twisted and folded. Thaling type 4 calculating the consumption of the target's divine force field. The energy consumption of the super arcane crystal pulse cannon type 4 is 90%, 80%, 70%. The remaining power of the target's divine force field is 70%, 60%, 50%. Attention! The target's divine force field is reduced to 30%. It is expected to disappear in 3 seconds. Blade Master, prepare for battle. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. The divine force field activated by the Queen of Spiders gradually weakened, and at the same time, the energy light of the super arcane crystal pulse cannon type 4 gradually dimmed. Just as the Queen of Spiders' divine force field shield completely disappeared, another portal opened in front of her. Thaling type 5 taking over the portal authority. Calculating the space waymark. Opening the portal. Extracting the energy of the elemental pool. Elemental fission wave blade, beginning to charge. The charging progress was Divine Artifact Level 1, Divine Artifact Level 2, Divine Artifact Level 3, Divine Artifact Level 4, Divine Artifact Level 5. The energy of the elemental pool is exhausted. Elemental fission wave blade, charging complete. Time passed by minute by minute. The Blade Master was already on standby tens of kilometers away. He held a strange sword hilt in his hand. There were countless runes engraved on it, and it had a special silver-white texture. There was no blade on the hilt, but in a strange light, a powerful energy was transmitted to the gem in the center of the hilt, and then a straight blade made entirely of energy appeared. The power of this strange energy blade was still increasing, and in the end, even the surrounding light was bent, like a strange stream of light trembling slightly. Elemental fission wave blade, can last for 10 seconds. Blade Master. Whether this plan succeeds or not depends on you. A tired metallic voice sounded. The Blade Master's eyes burst out a threatening light, and then he turned into a stream of light and rushed into the portal in front of him. Blade Master. Among all the melee professions, he had the most powerful explosive power. No melee professions could have more explosive power than a Blade Master, and only they could easily break the energy shield of a spellcaster. No melee professions could compare with a Blade Master in terms of damage output. The legendary Blade Master was one of the few existences who had the ability to directly kill the incarnations of gods, although they were still so fragile after entering the realm of legends. Note, legendary Blade Masters still can't wear protective gear. A light flashed through the air. Aura slash. Weakness detection. The seemingly simple attack contained the most fatal blow. The figure of the Blade Master crossed the air in an instant, and the next moment, the strange energy blade had penetrated the body of the Queen of Spiders, directly through her heart, leaving a huge hole in her body. However, there was no blood in the wound because the scorching energy had evaporated everything. Success? There was a dead silence on the battlefield, and the Blade Master's attack was launched at the moment when the divine power field was broken. Did we succeed? A slightly hesitant voice sounded. All the people present were legendary professions, and they could feel whether the target was still alive or not. The targets seemed to have been killed by them. But they couldn't believe that they had killed the legendary Queen of Spiders so easily. Even if they had planned for hundreds of years, in order to fully simulate the best sniping tactics of the Arcane Empire era, they even took the risk to enter the Clockwork Nirvana's mechanical mirror. But now that they seemed to have killed the target, everyone present still couldn't believe it. At this moment, a cold and urgent voice suddenly sounded, "Unknown energy reaction. Unknown energy reaction. The target has an unknown high-energy reaction. The half-plane energy is rapidly consumed. The current remaining energy is 30%, 20%, 10%. The half-plane shackles have failed. An unknown plane eroding energy has appeared. An unknown mutation has occurred in the half-plane. An unknown dark energy is eroding the half-plane. The half-plane is in a state of collapse. Alert! Alert! The battle plan has failed. All units prepare to retreat." Time froze at this moment. The Queen of Spiders, who had already lost her life, suddenly opened her eyes. A terrible divine radiance appeared in her eyes. In just a moment, her broken body was quickly repaired. At the same time, 8 terrifying spider legs appeared behind her. An unknown energy reflection slowly emerged, and a space crack seemed to open behind the Queen of Spiders. In it, a black evil land could be seen. There were countless creatures on this land, but they were all terrible existences for mortals. "Ha!" A cold and cruel female voice sounded. The Queen of Spiders slowly opened her eyes, and a cruel smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. With a gentle wave of her hand, the surrounding space was distorted. The figure of the orc sword saint was frozen in place, and the next moment, he turned into thousands of neat pieces of meat scattered. She looked down at everyone on the battlefield and sneered, "So it's the remnants of the Arcane Empire. You don't even have a floating city. Are you planning to kill me with these pieces of scrap metal? You're too naive." Crack. The Queen of Spiders gently clenched her fists, and the 2 legendary magic power armors instantly turned into a large pile of scrap iron. An incomprehensible domain shrouded the nearby space. All the portals were closed in an instant, and the unknown domain energy eroded this material world as if it was isolated in another space. Ridiculous spatial skills. A mocking smile appeared on the Queen of Spiders' face, and she slowly said, "The only surprise is the clockwork nirvana. I thought all the time perceivers had fallen. I didn't expect there to be a fish that escaped the net. What a tenacious vitality. The gods don't want to see your existence, but you can appear again and again." The Queen of Spiders raised her hand gently, and the stiff body of the monk was immediately divided into 2 parts. The head fell to the ground, and then the headless body slowly fell to the ground. Lotha's face was full of mockery. Mortals are mortals after all. They can never understand the power of the gods. Time, space, matter, bitwall. As long as it is within the domain of the gods, the rules are completely set by us. Distorted space. The barbarian suddenly let out an incomparably mournful scream, and in the next moment, his burly body melted like a candle, gradually melting into a pool of horrifying flesh and blood. The Queen of Spiders waved her hand casually, as if she was wiping away inconspicuous dust. She cast her gaze to a location dozens of kilometers away. The next moment, the veiled psionic warlock trembled all over. Then, her face turned pale, and her breath became extremely weak. Her vitality gradually faded along with the power of a curse. The veiled woman's breath gradually faded, and her skin seemed to have lost its vitality. Her face was pale, and her expression was blank and fearful. She desperately fled backward, but the once powerful woman was now as weak as an ordinary person. Annoying little fly. The Queen of Spiders let out a cold hum, and then her gaze seemed to penetrate the space and locked onto a certain position. Her figure gradually merged into the distorted space, and she said playfully, "Found you. Lowly little mice. Wait for my arrival." The figure of the Queen of Spiders disappeared. But it was not over, and even the entire bottomless abyss shook because of it. The bottomless abyss. The abyss of demons. The divine realm of the Queen of Spiders, Lolth. Since the battle of the Queen of Spiders was promoted to the greater divine power realm, the Queen of Spiders Lolth had lowered her divine realm to a deeper realm. That was the bottomless abyss. The Queen of Spiders moved her divine realm to the bottomless abyss, and she became the most powerful evil god in the bottomless abyss, an outsider, a slaughterer, and a schemer. Her arrival made the entire bottomless abyss tremble. Countless abyssal demons felt afraid and uneasy, but there was nothing they could do. Because absolute power was enough to change the rules, no one wanted to see the arrival of the Queen of Spiders, but no one could expel her. Because she was the Queen of Spiders, Lolth. The bottomless abyss. With a huge amount of divine power, the divine realm of the abyss of demons, which had descended into the bottomless abyss, began to move little by little. The huge vibration caused by the movement of the plane directly transmitted the energy to every corner of the bottomless abyss, and countless abyssal demons looked at the location of this space. At the same time, inside an incomparably splendid palace, the lazy figure of the succubus queen was lying on a luxurious throne. Her eyes suddenly turned to a certain space, and her expression seemed to change slightly. She murmured, "What is the bitch of the Queen of Spiders going to do?" She actually moved her divine realm at this time. Could it be that she was in some kind of trouble? Hee hee. Maybe I should leave her a surprise at this time. P.S. 2 in 1 chapter. I finished this paragraph in one breath. Continue to work hard tomorrow. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.